Hi everyone, welcome back. Welcome back? Welcome to, for the first time. If you're a returning listener, welcome back to the Car Chat podcast. I'm here this week with James, or Jayemm on cars, as he's known on the internet. Hello.
Hello there.
How can you tell the audience a little bit about sort of who you are, what you do?
So I was for a few years hoping to be a professional film TV cameraman, and that didn't go so well. So I decided to kind of flip sides of the lens and have spent the last 5 years trying to essentially recreate old, like 1990s Top Gear by just doing old-fashioned car reviews with the odd bit of sort of motoring drama in the middle of it, and it's gone quite well.
It seems to be going very well. So have you, let's sort of wind back to early days-ish. Have you always been a car guy since like you were little?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually got my motorbike license before my car license.
Nice.
And there's one single reason for that, which I sort of had a passing interest in motorbikes. Like my dad was really into bikes, but that never really translated. Like I had an interest, whereas I was definitely into cars.
Yeah.
But I knew that if I got my grandmother offered to pay for lessons for my 17th birthday. So I decided if I got her to pay for motorbike lessons, at some point in the near future, my parents would realize it would be really worthwhile me having a car license so I could be their taxi when they wanted to come home from the pub. But if I had a car license already, I couldn't convince anyone to pay for me for bike lessons. So I actually got my bike license first, car license immediately afterwards. And I grew up mostly kind of in the sticks, or when I did live in town, it was kind of far out. So originally, it was a desire, but also a necessity. Like I needed a car, otherwise I couldn't go anywhere.
That is a good move, getting your motorbike lesson, and also convincing like your grandmother. My grandmother, I don't know, maybe whether she would be like, I don't know whether I want you to ride a motorbike. Like that was a pretty good move.
It was very difficult because my grandfather actually died in a motorbike crash.
Oh shit!
So as you can imagine, it wasn't the easy thing to convince. But I was quite lucky in that my family took what I think was a fairly healthy attitude towards it. In the, there's two ways you can go about it. Either you can be like, no son of mine is going near this and the other. And as at the time, my father was running like a support team in one of the British Superbike races, like. It would be a little bit hypocritical of him to be like, no, son, you're not going anywhere near motorbikes. It's like, Dad, that's what you're doing every weekend is playing on motorbikes. So like, you pull the other one. But what they did instead was they took the attitude of like, okay, if you are going to get into bikes, let's make sure we get you on something, reasonably new, relatively safe. We'll make sure to buy you, the right protective equipment, get you good training, all that kind of stuff. Like, went out with my dad and he would, show me like some of the obvious rules of the road and then some of the sort of unwritten rules of the road and that kind of stuff. So, I was very glad that they took a sort of fairly healthy sort of attitude towards it, because they could have gone very differently.
And it's definitely a better attitude overall, because at the end of the day, if you want to ride a bike, you will end up riding a bike. And if they can start you off in the right direction, at least somewhat sensibly, then you're less likely to have a massive crash, just a little bit less likely.
Absolutely. And I still remember a lot of the things that I learned as a motorbike rider now. I haven't ridden a bike for years, but it's something that always stays with you. And I think you can sometimes tell a car driver when they're also a biker, because they do behave quite differently. The things that they do, the ways that they act on the road. Also, you can tell when they spot other bikes, because if you're a biker and you come up behind a car, you'll know if they're a biker because they'll instantly move over, they'll signal, they'll let you pass, like the whole shebang. So, and bikers are the friendliest people. I did my CBT, which is compulsory basic training. So you have to do like a day in a car park to get your license, or your basic license here. I got a flat tire within 2 miles of having got that. So my first ever experience on a motor vehicle in the wild on my own, big, exciting, the world is your lobster. I get a flat. It probably actually wasn't even 2 miles. It's probably like 1 mile. I got to this roundabout and the bike was kind of doing this thing, and I was like, oh, that didn't feel so good. Like, I'm just going to pull over and see what's going on. And yeah, it's complete flat, mystery flat as well. Like there wasn't a nail in it or anything. And within about 30 seconds of me being on the side of the road, a biker had come around the roundabout, seen me, came round again, pulled over, offered his assistance, and it's like, this is crazy. Like, these bikers are so friendly, like so willing to help each other. That was great.
When you got a motorbike, I guess it's not like a road bike. It's not like you're carrying a spare inner tube. Presumably you get sort of towed or something like that.
What I actually did on that occasion was I phoned up the guy who'd just done my my training, and because I was a mile away from them, and I was like, "Hello, it's me. Remember me from 10 minutes ago?" And he's like, "Yeah." I was like, "So I've got a flat," and he's like, "And?" Like, it's like, well, I know you've got a trailer. Like, I was really hoping maybe you could come and get me. And he's just like, grumble. Okay. So he came and got me, and then, I towed the bike back. I had to phone my dad. I was like, "Dad, I've got a flat tire already. Like, can you come and get me?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah, fine." So he came and get me. And then, so I had to wait like another week or so, and then to get dropped back off, and then to have my triumphant ride home on my own. So, yeah, that was irksome. But, an entertaining way to start my motoring career, I suppose.
Yeah. It is a point you brought up about the being riding a motorbike. I had an off-road motorbike, had a motocross bike when I was younger, but I never rode it on the road. But I do somewhat an amount of cycling now. And that in itself has completely adjusted how I treat cyclists as a car user. Like, you realize the problems and the things that they have to deal with that you don't as a car. And I imagine it's exactly the same with a motorbike. And it really should be mandatory, I think, for everyone to kind of have a go on all of them, if that was possible.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, doing like even 2 days on a motorbike, I think would dramatically change most car drivers' perspectives of things, especially if it's a moped. Like around London, not really such an issue, but like around where I grew up, like there's a lot of 60 mile an hour limits, and my moped was still restricted and everything. So even on a good hill with a heavy tailwind, like I'd get maybe 35 out of it.
Yeah.
And so you really have to learn awareness, because you'll think there's no one behind you, and you'll look and you'll be like, "Oh, crikey, no, there's loads of people," and you've like, "Okay, well, let's get these people past." And I agree entirely. Like with we get a lot of cyclists around where I live, and it frustrates the heck out of me when I see people overtaking them. And if it was a car they were trying to overtake, they wouldn't even try. Like they wouldn't even bother, even if it was a car doing 10 mile an hour. But because it's a cyclist, they just think it's okay. And it's like, it's really not. Like, and it angers me, because obviously I use these roads a lot. I want to try and stay on side with everybody around here. And so I see people just going, so it's just cyclists. We'll just get past and hope nothing's coming the other way. And it drives me crazy. But, you get these things.
It does. And then I've definitely had it as a cyclist where you're going quite fast. Like, you're going the speed that's probably the speed limit, or like a touch under. But there is definitely a psychological bit, and I think I'm a bit like this as a car driver as well, that you're like, well, I should go past the bike because I'm in a car. You're like, yeah, but if they're going the speed limit and you're not going anywhere, does it matter?
When London started doing all its 20 mile an hour limits, that was one of the things that frustrated me, because like, your average cyclist is probably doing 15 or something like that. So, when you got a 30 mile an hour speed limit, like you can get past them quite briskly. But when it's a 20 mile an hour limit and they're doing like 16 mile an hour, you're like, oh, I do want to get past them, but also I don't want to get accidentally done for speeding. And and it's the whole thing of like, oh, this is absolutely ridiculous. And then obviously in London, you're supposed to give people 1.5 meters, and it's like, you find me 1.5 meters of space in London.
Yeah, that's impossible.
It's just not going to happen.
You've just got to not put them in a gutter. That's basically it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, of course, you will see the odd people. Like, I mean, we used to get it a lot. So I used to live in Suffolk, and you get the A14 cutting through. And they would do cycle races there, quite frequently. And I just never understood it. I mean, I used to do a lot of cycling when I was younger. I wish I did more of it now, because I probably should do it to get a bit fitter and healthier and all that jazz. But it's because I know the roads around here. I'm like, no, I'm not cycling around here. Like, they are, even well-behaved car drivers, like, there's just not space here. There's just not space for everyone. But yeah, people would do these cycle races up and down the A14, and I'd be like, have you got a death wish? Like, that doesn't sound fun. Like, that does not that does not sound or look fun. Like I see guys doing it in the south of France. I'm like, yeah, that looks great. The scenery's beautiful. It's spectacular. You know, I go up into Scotland. I go to test route in the Highlands, and you share that with a lot of cyclists, and you're like, yeah, this is gorgeous. It's amazing. The scenery here is beautiful.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful place to be, especially when the sun is out. A14, even on a glorious summer day, it's horrible. Like it's like, why? Why would you do that?
And you've got lorries going past you at 65 and you're going 30 or maybe 35 or something.
And people are killed all the time. Like all the time. They just because you get one lorry come past would then suck the cyclist into the road. Next lorry comes past, bang, you're like, great, you're just a sort of dust that used to be a person and a bicycle. And it's like, and what were you trying to aim? You're like, I was going to cycle up and down the A14. And to me, that's just like, when someone says to me, here's something you could do where you might be killed, I'd be like, no, it doesn't even sound fun if I don't get killed. And it's really not fun if I get killed. So
surely there's a better back
I don't get it. Yeah, there must be. You know, we had it was one of the, I think it was like a women's tour. It wasn't the Tour de France, but we had some sort of reasonably big cycle tour come through here. And actually that was lovely. You know, they sort of closed the roads off. You know, yeah, actually it's a really nice place to cycle, especially when you know there's no traffic. And that was lovely. Like, do it here. Like, don't do it on the A14, please.
Don't do it on an A road. That is definitely...
No.
I was up in Norfolk and I came across, it must be some people doing some time trial or something on effectively a motorway, and you're just like, no, guys.
Oh, that'll be the A11 then.
There's a place and a time, and this is not it. So we seem to have gone off onto motorbikes and cycles. But so cars, your family was heavily into motorbikes, also into cars?
Yes, yeah, very much so. I mean, we didn't have much money when I was born. My dad, or my parents, I guess I should say, had started their own business. So I quite literally grew up on workshop tables in like a unit in an industrial estate nearby.
Yeah.
And so, you know, he'd always been into cars, and, you know, I guess he'd had some odd cars as a young person. My grandfather was also one of these weird people I think we all encounter that isn't really into cars, but has also owned some really cool cars. You know, you get people like that. You're like, oh, you must love cars. Not really, but they happen to just keep buying. Like he had a Renault Fuego Turbo, like stuff like that. He was gonna buy an Austin Princess, which would have been the car my father was going to learn to drive in. So when he was 17, my granddad was going to buy an Austin Princess, and my father was very much prepared to never speak to him again. If he had to, you know, as a 17-year-old young lad, you know, lad about town, this was going to be the car he got to drive.
Yeah.
Fortunately, something, you know, I know it's hard to believe, but something went wrong with the British manufacturing industry, and the Princess was not available. So instead, my granddad bought an Alfa Romeo Alfetta GT. And
nice.
He's like, well, you went from buying like the least cool car you could possibly buy to the most cool car you could possibly buy. And then my dad got to be a 17-year-old driving about in an Alfa Romeo Alfetta. And he's like, this is the coolest thing ever. But yeah, he had quite a mix of cars we had in the household growing up. So there was sort of fairly humdrum stuff when I was younger. You know, usual sort of Vauxhalls, that sort of stuff. A lot of work vans. There was a lot of vans in my childhood. I got a real fondness for vans. Then some nice stuff did appear. There was a Ferrari 328 was probably the first car of note, although it tells you how you remember things. That when I was young, I thought it was the worst car in the world because it didn't have a radio in it. So there was just a hole where the radio was supposed to be, and I was like, Dad, this car's rubbish. Like, I don't know why you bother.
Send it back, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, this is awful. Like, I don't know why you're so fussed about it. And he had an E36 M3 pre-Evo, the early one, which I think was Boston Green. So he had that. Then later we had a 911. So he had another 911 sort of after that. A couple of Jags, had an S-Type when it was a new thing. Then the old XKR. And some various bits and bobs, and then got on to own sort of all sorts of different stuff really later on. But very much responsible for my enthusiasm in cars.
And did you evolve from the it hasn't got a stereo to
Eventually he then got a 355, which is the yellow 355 that has been on the channel, which I'll confess, and this is actually the first time I've confessed this, I hid the fact that was my father's. because when I was starting out, I'd seen already what happens with people. I've seen it happen to Tim and to Sam and to all the other guys, and I just thought, yeah, okay, my dad's got a Ferrari, like it's an old one. He's had it since 1997.
Yeah.
And never sort of really upgraded it. He bought it then, and that was his thing, and he's just kept it. He's got a couple of other nice cars, and I just sort of thought, like, yeah, if I kind of let on, especially as I was starting the channel, I'd bought my Lotus. So, the first thing I did on the channel was, here, I'm buying a £70,000 Lotus. And I just thought, if I go and do that, and then I also say to people that, oh, my father has a Ferrari, the connection is going to be instantly made. Oh, obviously your dad bought you the Lotus then. And it's like, actually, no, I really wish that were the case, but no, that's not how that happened. So I kind of elected, like, if it was anything sort of reasonably nice like that, I would kind of just be like, yeah, it's someone in the family has this, because the fact is it was irrelevant. So I didn't want to open myself up to that whole kind of thing early on.
Yeah, totally.
Now I'm more comfortable talking about it because obviously the channel's at a stage where people can quite obviously see, like, yes, no, evidently you're doing enough there to be able to pay for your own Ferrari. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a funny one, that, like, and the way different people go about it. I think you probably have an opinion on this. Like, there's certain people, like I'm not like a massive YouTuber or anything, but I fully admit all the time, I'm like, I have a great background, extremely large family business, sold, made a lot of money. That's why I have nice toys. I choose to do all this stuff, blah, 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 blah. But there's a bunch of people, everyone's getting scrutinized, aren't they? They're like, okay, but how did you, everyone's always just like, how did you afford that? Or like, did someone else pay for it? And everyone gets it. Tim, James, everybody. And then different people deal with it in different ways. And that goes down differently, I think, with your audience, because ultimately people can smell bullshit a mile away.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. People are simultaneously much more stupid and much smarter than we ever give them credit for.
Yeah. They'll say really dumb stuff
entirely.
But then the ability to read between the lines, someone will say something, you're like, yeah, but that's not the full story, or it is, or whatever. And you just got to do it one or two ways. You either just say, yeah, I don't want to talk about it, or like you say, you just go like, yes, there is something there, or you just be entirely honest about it and go like, yeah, no, this isn't my car. I've just borrowed it for a couple of weeks or whatever, and that's it. But like, yeah, I think if you try and start building a story that's not the truth, I think people will, and it would appear, particularly maybe over the last 18 months, that some people have a lot of time on their hands and are quite happy to sort of play amateur detective, and try and work stuff out, and they'll start going through companies' house records and things like that and start trying to research histories. It is quite funny sometimes because people will sometimes think that they've cracked a great mystery, and it's like, yeah, no, actually what you don't realize is that when you think that thing happened, it was actually 2 months, before then, as you well know, doing the YouTube bit, and you was friends with a lot of YouTubers. Like, I have what I call like the storyline, and real life, and you're like, and they broadly follow each other, but like, like there's a car that I bought at Christmas time. It still hasn't made it on the channel because there's some stuff going on with it and I want to get it sorted out, and it's nothing particularly exciting or dramatic. It's just that when the car does arrive, I want it to be like, da-da, here's what it is. It's going to be a permanent feature. So there's actually loads of stuff that's happened since then, and you've got this constant in your head trying to think, oh, crikey, no, I haven't told anyone about that, have I? Like, oh, I better keep that a secret. And then, of course, then people in your life know about the car, and I've had people nearly spoil stuff because they've then commented and be like, oh, but James, but what about your... And you're like, don't talk about it.
Yeah, so I've got the most massive respect for all these people that do YouTube, whatever their background is. The one thing I will always absolutely disagree with is this idea that to make, in the context of car stuff, let's say, to make a channel successful, is that you need to have really fancy cars on it. I've spoken to a lot of young people. They're like, oh, if only I could get loads of supercars on the channel, it'd be really big. And it's like, no, it's not. There was a guy called Panos, and he mostly did videos with he had a Seat Ibiza, I think, not even a hot one. Like, it was just a plain one. And he did very basic videos, essentially on how you drive a car.
Yeah.
That's what it was, How do you do a hill start? Stuff like that. It took me about 2.5, 3 years to get my channel bigger than his. Like, and I probably covered 100 or 200 different cars in that time, and he only did one. And ultimately, I think you can definitely make a channel successful without needing anything more than what you already have. I mean, there's channels out there. You've got it's stuff like Life of Palos and stuff where actually he wouldn't even need to feature any of his own car content, and he still built something. So there's always a way. It just requires a little bit more creativity.
And the model of buying a car, doing some videos of it and selling it and then buying another car is it works, but you have to be, it's only a small percentage of your content. Even Tim, who's his channel's so successful that it totally works to do all of this stuff. The majority of his content is other stuff. So it's not how you make a channel. Like, it's making a channel is finding interesting content that other people want to watch. And if you find it, I think the main thing I found was if you find it interesting, there'll be people like you that will find it interesting, whatever it is.
No, 100%. And you have to find it exciting. It does worry me that I meet a lot, and you must get exactly the same. I meet a lot of young people, including people that are 7 or 8, that want to be YouTubers when they grow up.
Yeah.
And it's like, you can't just do some YouTube. And I think they kind of see, the kind of Logan Pauls and Mr. Beasts and that of the world, and they think oh, I'll just sit in a tub of baked beans for 2 days and I'll instantly get 50 grand, and you're like, no, that works for some people, but you have to get there. And if you do want to be a YouTuber, you're going to need a craft or a skill or a passion about which you are knowledgeable enough that you can talk, confidently and competently for an extended period of time, and also in such a way that you excite your audience. Because if you're not excited doing it, what the hell's the point? Just don't bother.
Yeah, absolutely. And you don't even necessarily, you need to be knowledgeable about it. Let's say, for example, this podcast. Okay, I've driven a bunch of cars. I have my own opinions about cars and whatnot. But the general premise of this podcast is getting other people on that know about whatever they're doing and asking them about their stuff. Like, getting information, pulling information from other people who are professionals and who know all of their stuff. And that in itself, you don't need a base to do that. You just need to be able to message someone and convince them to have a chat with you. But to anyone, literally, you don't need a car, you don't need anything. You just need a passion for it, and you've got to follow that angle, and then put in 100 bazillion hours.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? The people will, at the minute. I mean, there's 2 Ferraris on my driveway right now. One is mine, and one is an 812 GTS that's Ferrari's press car, and neither of those things materialized. Congrats on the 812, by the way. Excellent choice. Neither of those things materialized on their own. So people will look at the recent stuff, and it's there are already something 800 videos on my channel. So I started off with some money that I had from working in film. Mm-hmm. And what having money already in the bank gave me was just a bit of a safety net to kind of go, okay, I can, I've worked out I can survive for, X number of years without having to go back and haul myself out to film producers again, and I can live. So I sort of bought the Lotus and was like, right, I was really serious about YouTube. I probably did it the wrong way. I don't think I'd really recommend to anyone else to do it, but I just went the whole hog.
Yeah.
I went all in. I basically gave up on film. I felt like it had given up on me, and I just went into the YouTube thing. And the first year is soul crushing. I mean, it's horrendous. It's definitely possible, definitely 100% possible to do stuff quicker and probably better than I did it. I picked Lotus, which is a brand that just nobody cares about. In terms of YouTube analytics, Lotus is poison. Like, I make no secret about it. Like, I have told Lotus's PR to their face that is the case, and unsurprisingly, they weren't too happy about that. You know, if I do a video on a Ferrari, I've been looking through my analytics, as I'm sure you do all the time. I was looking through my analytics, and you'll get broadly, so you get on YouTube, you know, you get the little graphs. It's a rolling 28 days, the basic, and you know, you get my sort of, you know, I get my views. They'll always do that, and it's like a heartbeat because you know your release schedule, and then broadly speaking, the money in will sort of follow that pattern. But whenever there's a Ferrari on the channel, you know, I'll probably get like a 20% income boost versus if I was doing, say, a you know, a Ford or a Vauxhall or anything like that. And with Lotus, I actually made quite a big clerical error last year, which is that at Christmas time, I try and sort of push loads of content out because there's more money anyway. More content means more views, means more revenue. It's simple business. I wanted, because I still love Lotus cars and some of the Lotus brand, I wanted to start off with a Lotus week. So I did like 4 Lotus cars, including some really rare stuff that does not get featured on YouTube very often. So I did a Cortina, I did a Type 14 Elite, I did a 211. Like the 211 did okay, but the rest of them, I can't remember what the fourth one was, but the rest of them just died a death. And that basically took me a long time to recover. Had the same thing 2 years ago. I did a week featuring American classic cars.
Yeah.
They don't do very well on my channel. It took me 3 months to recover from the lull that created. And it's awful. So I'm never doing a Lotus week ever again. Like, just not happening. I'll do Lotus content. Like I did an Evora video the other day, and that actually was a bit of a hit. But just on the whole, I can't do it because I imagine people just aren't searching. On the other hand, what it did do for me starting out was that I was able to then be the biggest fish in a very small pond quite quickly. So that was the trade-off, and that was what I knew was going to happen, and it did. And so it did work out. Like it didn't bring me a lot of money or a lot of views, but it did bring me some, I guess, notoriety in those circles. And Lotus owners are lovely people. They really are.
Yeah, I've noticed that. I did a video I went down to the factory and drove what did I do? Elise and Exige 410. And did 2 videos. I had about an hour, blah, 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 filmed them. And then quite a lot of people came out of the woodwork because I don't think, like you said, not that many people make videos about those cars.
No.
And so those videos did reasonably well relative to everything else because I think they were just all getting shared like in forums and whatnot. And most people come back and be like, you can't drive and all those things. But generally, it was pretty like, everyone's like, oh my God, someone's talking about Lotus. This is great, blah, 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 blah. So I had lots of like positive stuff back from it. But I think that's like doing it every now and then, the right car, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Let's dive back a little bit. What were you doing in film? Or were you a cameraman? What was it? And then what got you into that?
So, totally honest, when I was younger, my major ambition in life was to earn lots and lots of money.
Cool.
So, because, you know, having lots and lots of money would then get me all the things that I wanted to do. So I was looking into all the usual suspects. You know, I was like, could be an airline pilot, could be a lawyer. At one stage, what I was looking at doing, where my life wanted to go, I was going to do a triple degree at Cambridge, which was going to be a combination of law, German, and German law, because I also like German and Germany. And German was the subject I was best at school. And unfortunately, some things went on in my personal life at the time. My parents split up. It was probably affected me more than I really acknowledged at the time. Long story short, I worked out that when none of your family talk to each other, you don't really have to do anything because nobody will notice, which meant that I wound up missing like huge chunks of school at quite important times. And I went from being a sort of top in the sort of county student to being you might just about scrape some A-levels here if you work really, really hard. So unfortunately, along with that went my chances to go to Oxford or Cambridge or anywhere similar. So I was in a real rut. I was really stuck with my life. I just did not know what I wanted to do. I'd always been into film, and I actually been part of like the filmmaking clubs and stuff at school, making like little end of year summary videos, all sorts of, boring stuff, covering sports day and all that sort of stuff, because I'd definitely rather be behind the camera than running. So I sort of did all that stuff, and I'd never wanted to go into film because I'd always had this idea, much like computers, that was sort of one of my earlier passions. I'd never wanted to go into that because I thought, if it's my hobby and I then make it my job, will I lose all of the enjoyment of it as a result? So, but I'd screwed up by my own hand my chances of going and becoming some hotshot lawyer. So my mother, I think, was like, well, you really like film. Why don't you go to film school or study that? And as it turned out, there was a new film school opening up that was essentially so desperate for people to go. If you basically had the money to get in, then you were pretty much in. I didn't really realize it at the time, but actually it was quite a good education compared to what a lot of the other people I know who did film got. So the rates then were more than the tuition fees at the time, which was still $3,000. But my parents were kind of like, look, if this is going to actually keep you out of trouble and you're going to do it and put the hours in, then go and do it. So I moved out of living in sleepy Suffolk, moved to London, went and did a very intensive 2-year degree. So because I worked out, I think your average university student got a longer summer holiday than I had time off over the entire 2 years. So it's like it was a Monday to Friday, long days, but a good education. I went into it not really knowing what bit of film it was I wanted to do. Because at the time I thought obviously it was very possible to be writer, director, author, visionary, dreamweaver plus actor, but I quickly worked out that it was the camera stuff. It was camera and editing were the two things that I really kind of took to. But editing involved sitting in a room at a computer all day long. And as I spent my evenings sitting in a room at a computer, it seemed to me more obvious that maybe camera was the more healthy thing for me to do. My camera mentor was a guy called Paul Wheeler, who's one of the really important people in my life. He was great. I still get on with him to this day. And he basically sort of taught me how to do stuff the proper way. So a lot of people keep telling me that some of the ways I do things is very sort of classic BBC. And it's probably because I was trained by a classically trained BBC man. So I then graduated and just started the hard slog of working on anything and everything that came my way as a cinematographer or director of photography or whatever you want to call it. So that went on for about 7 years.
Cool. That sounds like a great sort of background to be absolutely sort of overqualified for making YouTube videos.
Every time
sense.
someone looks at my camera, that's a big camera. I'm like, no, it's not. It's not at all.
It's not even mounted to the floor. What are you talking about?
I still have loads of like filmmaking pieces. I've still got like this little random thing, which I know doesn't really look like much of anything. This is a ground glass, so it's got like you can't really see it very well. You see, it's got like a square kind of graved into it. So when you're on real old film cameras, this kind of sits above the where your lens goes, and this is the pattern. So depending on if you're going to film widescreen or like anamorphic or 4:3, you have one of these. These were like £1,000 each, and they mostly keep doors and things level around the house now. This tells you the value of filmmaking kit these days. I once worked out in my lounge, I have a little surround sound system, and to get the speakers the right height, I just put some boxes, and each of these boxes had some magazines in them, the old film magazines. And I then worked out that according to their new prices, the stands under my speakers were originally worth £80,000. Which nowadays, I mean, I quite literally cannot give them away. I've tried on occasions to give them away, and I can't, because it's now obscure filmmaking kit no one's really wanted for 15 years. So I just keep it about the house and prop speakers up with it.
And then, so at what point in time did you go? You reached the point where you were like, you know what, I want to give this YouTube thing a go. Had you made YouTube videos before then? And what
No.
yeah, at what point did you go, actually, cars, YouTube, all of that?
So there were, I suppose, 2 or 3 key things that kind of pushed me out of film, and then sort of, I guess, one that pushed me into YouTube. So I'll try and give you the reasonably condensed versions. I had bought, as a company I knew, they bought old film TV, actually mostly TV cameras. They bought a load of old film cameras, and I mean proper old school, like, 80s stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, they were trying to sell them, and they didn't have a clue what they were talking about. They thought because they knew TV cameras, they would know film cameras. The reality is they're pretty different. So I knew the guys anyway, and I offered to buy this camera off of them, and I bought it for like $1,000. Once upon a time, this was probably a £250,000 camera, right?
Yeah.
So that's, if people think Alfa Romeos depreciate, like you ain't seen nothing. So I bought this camera, and I just thought, you know what, I'm gonna take my chances here. I'm just gonna stick it on eBay for like $3,000.
Yeah.
Because I actually knew what it was. I could test it. I could check it. I could do all the stuff that they couldn't do because they didn't have a clue what they were doing. Anyway, it sold. It sold within like a week.
Nice.
And I was like, oh, okay, that's great. And I was actually working on a little film shoot at the time, a little feature film shoot up in Liverpool. And so I knew they had 2 more of these cameras. So I phoned them up and I said, hey, can I buy another one of those cameras at $1,000? And they were like, yeah, sure. So I put that up on eBay, and I sold that one within a week. And I thought, hang on a minute. In like a few hours of driving, a little bit on eBay, and a couple of quick phone calls, I've made more money than I have working my arse off for 4 weeks, in Liverpool for hours and hours a day, literally at certain points, I was stuck inside a locker, like all hunched up, trying to get funky shots and stuff. And I was like, hang on a minute. So I then realized that there was much more money to be made in buying and selling kit, and also much more money to be made, much easier buying and selling kit.
Yeah.
So I did that. Then a few things happened. Basically, there were a lot of directors and people that I work with, and some of them were very loyal to me, but I started to get on more than one occasion where I'd really, really worked my backside off, and I'd done everything that I could. And you're a professional snapper, so you obviously know what it's like. And you bend over backwards to give someone a deal because they really don't have that much money. And then the minute they get their next job where they do have a big budget, you'll be like, okay, cool. So you're gonna hire me, and you're gonna actually pay me a proper rate, aren't you? And they'll be like, actually, no, we're just hiring this other guy instead. And it's like, oh, why not? It's like, oh well, but his show reel's a bit nicer than your one. It's like
He charges more.
Yeah. Well, also more to the point, it was the case of like, but they're like, oh, but you didn't really do that good a job on the last one or something. It'd be like, no, but the thing is, the shots that you wanted, you literally could not have because of the budget that you had. Like, it wasn't that I couldn't give them to you. It's just that you didn't have the budget for them. They were never, ever going to happen.
Yeah.
And so I realized that what I was doing is I had, like, probably at the time I'd worked up, it took a lot of years, probably about $100,000 of camera kit in the house. So, and I was like, what I realized was I was basically subsidizing people's hobbies. And I just thought, sod all of this. This is not what I want to be doing.
Yeah.
And I kept looking at my boxes of cameras and stuff, and I kept looking at them being like, you could be a Ferrari, you could. So I wasn't happy with where things were going, and so I decided, like, okay, sod it. Let's just find something else in life. I am not in Hollywood doing multi-million blockbusters. This is definitely where I should have been by 25 or whatever. Like, let's rejig your life. So I thought, let's sell all the camera kit and let's do something really monumentally stupid. I'm not married, I don't have kids. I was like, let's just go and buy something really crazy. Let's get a Ferrari, let's get a Lamborghini or something, and let's just muck around for a year while we work out what it is that I actually want to do with my life.
Yeah.
And so I started looking at different cars and things. Ferrari 360, Lamborghini Gallardo, the Lotus Evora was sort of quite high on the list. The 400 had just come out, and I was looking at that, and I was thinking, I was like, oh, wouldn't it be really nice, doing the maths thing? I was like, wouldn't it be really nice if there was a way of monetizing, having a nice car. And I looked at the car rental thing, and that just seemed to be a hiding to nothing. I was like, no, that seems like it's going to be a nightmare.
Isn't that just money laundering for a lot of businesses?
I think it is. I think it is. I was looking somewhat. I wasn't really thinking, Bugatti Chiron at 20 grand a day, more like MGB at £100 type thing. But yes, I agree. So, but I just had this moment. When you get this like light bulb moment. And I was looking at Lotus, and Lotus Evora seemed like it was a pretty good candidate because the one thing was I had all this money in the bank, yes, but I was also giving up my income ultimately. So if I had a car and it broke, I could not really fix it. If it suddenly threw me a £5 grand bill, I was like, I can't deal with this. And I realised that there was a couple of reviews on the Evora 400. But not really many. And then when I started looking into other Lotus content, I was like, hang on a minute, there's not really a lot of Lotus stuff on YouTube. I thought they're only a couple of hours down the road. They must be nice people. And if I buy a Lotus, I can do a whole bit because, I was looking at R8s, but by that time, R8's done to death on YouTube.
Yeah.
So I just thought, okay, let's treat it like a business. Let's treat it like starting a new business. Like I could do a YouTube thing. Lotus is my USP because nobody else is doing that. Let's just try and make something happen and become a hit superstar YouTuber. That'll definitely only take 6 or 7 months. And try and earn some money that way. And that's kind of how that started.
Nice. How often were you making videos at the beginning?
So my personal, I had a few I guess you call them prime directives maybe, or just personal guidelines. One of those was going to be, certainly in the early days, is I was going to put out no fewer than 1, but no more than 2 videos a week. Because especially early on, I was very limited in what content I could make. Like you were saying earlier, I just bought my Evora, but there is only really ever a set number of videos you're going to get out of a car, and that's still true today. So you're like, I've bought this car, then a little bit about why did I buy this car, how much does it cost to run and service, then the usual 6 months down the line, how's it been, I'm going to go and do a track day with it or something like that. So I knew that the car would only ever have so much life in it in terms of making videos. I did a few comparison videos. A lot of my first year of YouTube was Evora 400 versus until I realized that basically meant that 10 minutes of every single video I made was exactly the same. So I stopped doing that. But yeah, that's kind of where that all sort of started.
And then so you committed to 1, maybe 2 a week. And was that really hard? I mean, that is challenging at the best of times. Have you found at the beginning, was that particularly hard, or did you think that's changed?
So it comes in waves, because obviously when you start off, it's quite easy because you're like, I've got this huge big pile of ideas, and you're like, and most of them obviously are one-time ideas. So the start is okay. The first few months is all right, and you got the enthusiasm, the excitement, and all that jazz, until you then start putting videos out, and you see that 60 people watched this video that I spent all day making. Like, yay! What I was lucky with was that fairly early on, a few of the Lotus dealers saw what I was doing, and my theory about being the big fish in the small pond started to pay off. Lotus Factory, totally and completely uninterested in what I was doing, and that was understandable because I was a nobody. But the Lotus dealers were very good. So Bell and Colville in particular were absolutely amazing. And Jayemm, the sales guy down there, would just let me come down, and he knew I wasn't going to buy anything from them, and I hadn't even bought my car from them. So I went down there and I would do stuff, and then people would ask me and go like, oh, what's the old automatic box like versus the new automatic box? So I went down there one day in what I can only describe as like a tsunami, and drove the old Evora automatic and the new Evora automatic and all that sort of stuff. And then so I was quite heavily involved in some of the Lotus forums and the groups online. And Lotus, for a tiny company, has an unfathomably large number of owners clubs and groups associated with it. So I was active in as many of them as I could be, and the people sort of started to recognize my name within those circles. I started getting recognized when I had like 1,000, 2,000 subscribers, which was a very odd sensation. So yes, that's kind of how that started, and they were very, very helpful because that was a lot of my early content. And then of course I started convincing friends to let me drive their cars and all that sort of stuff. And then probably after about a year or two, that's when people actually just started emailing me out of the blue, being like, "Hey, do you want to drive my car?" And it's kind of gone from there.
Yeah, and then you're getting to drive. Well, you've got an 812 GTS sitting on your drive.
Yes, I do. Regrettably, as soon as we're done here, I have to take it back, which is going to be quite painful. But yeah, no, it's that's one of my most sort of, I can call it a possession. One of my most prized possessions is the relationship that I have with Ferrari. Partly the fact that I have one.
Yes.
A relationship rather than a Ferrari. It's lovely to have a Ferrari, but had you asked me a few years ago, I would have said, the two companies that are by far the hardest to kind of get in with would be Rolls-Royce and Ferrari. Rolls-Royce thus far, no fruit there. But Ferrari actually turned out to be really surprisingly nice, friendly, down to earth. I get on with their PR guy exceptionally well, who for some reason taken a liking to me. So, and I've worked with them on a few things when I did actually manage to get my own car, and that's been really quite nice and quite unexpected. Like, I just never even conceived that they would even answer my emails.
Yeah,
so to be able to chat to them is nice.
I've not had any Ferrari press loans or anything, but I've spoken to them a few times, and the thing that struck me about them, over and above a lot of others, is incredible honesty. They're just like, look, this is the deal. This is the situation. You're not quite there yet, or whatever, blah, 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 job done. Whereas other people might just ghost you or not reply or be like, yeah, no, we've got no cars to lend anyone. And you're like, I know you do. Why are you lying?
Yeah,
just tell me you don't want to give me a car.
Yeah, I have had that. I've had people be like, no, there are none of these. There are none of these anywhere. And then I'm like, yeah, a week later, there's 5 people all had one. You're like, there definitely was. And it's the most odd thing, because you would expect, that I guess buying cars, working with the manufacturers, there'd be a hierarchy. It's like, right, first off, you're going to deal with, Vauxhall or Ford or someone, and Kia, and you're like, and then you might deal with BMW, Jag, Mercedes, or so on, and then you'll deal with Porsche, and then you get to deal with Ferrari. Whereas actually, I dealt with Ferrari before I dealt with Porsche. I have dealt with Bentley, but Mazda told me no. Yeah. Essentially, Mazda were good. Mazda got back to me. The company I actually did have some of the most respect for was JLR, because I emailed them again. I had about 10,000 subs maybe, so the channel had been going a couple of years. Yeah. Everyone kept asking me, can you do an F-Type comparison, because at the Evora, F-Type seemed a fairly natural rival. Yeah. And I didn't know anyone with an F-Type, and quite simply I was like, if I don't know someone with the car, I can't get access to it. Yeah. So I thought, sod it, I'll email Jaguar, and they came back. And they were very honest, and they said, look, thank you for your email, appreciate, like what you're doing. Your channel's just not big enough for us. Thank you. I was like, but what is big enough? Tell me what big enough is, and I'll come back. And they said, look, about 50K, and then we can talk. So, 2 years down the line, I was getting to close to 50K, and I sent them an email, and true to their word, they said, okay, yeah, you've done it. Congratulations, well done. What do you want?
Nice.
Brilliant. Whereas, some manufacturers and I've had manufacturers where I've met them at events and spoken to them, and they have just totally and completely. One manufacturer, who I won't name, but they're German and have a 3-pointed star as their logo. I met them at an event, and a friend of mine had just sold his C63, which I was going to review. So I met them, they let me drive a car, a very nice, expensive car, and that was nice. And I said to them, oh, hello, I would love to do something with you, officially. My friend of mine had a C63, I was going to review it, could I have one? And they said, oh, we don't have one. Of course you do. Of course you do. It's you're one of your most popular performance cars. Of course you've got at least one. And then they said to me, well, no, we only give cars to people we work with. So it's like, well, that's a little bit kind of catch-22. Like how are you expected to ever work with us if you don't give cars to anyone you I was like, start me off small. Like when I worked with Audi, they were very nice, and I went to them asking for an R8, and they said, look, we're not going to give you an R8 as a first loan, but how about an RS3?
Yeah.
Cool, great, yeah, sure. I'll have the RS3. I'll not bin that. So I did the RS3. Actually, the videos did quite well, particularly for the time. That went back, and then I said to them, cool, can I have an R8 now? And they said, yes, you can. But we have just facelifted the car, so unfortunately, all of the range has just been taken off the press fleet, and we're not going to get any back for a good 6 to 12 months. And when they do reappear, obviously you are going to be at the bottom of the list, which is entirely understandable. And that actually turned out to be quite a good thing for me, because I said, okay, that's fine, but as a totally random aside, if you don't have an R8, do you have an A2? Which I think took them by surprise. I don't think they were expecting me to ask for that as an alternative. And they sort of said, oh, yeah, actually, we do. And we've even got the special A2 3-litre that surprised me, because that's not a model ever sold in the UK.
Right.
And a lot of the manufacturers I found, when it comes to heritage fleets, they only keep stuff that was sold here.
Yeah.
So I said to them, okay, cool. And they introduced me to the guy who at the time ran, amongst other things, the heritage fleet. And I did a video on the A2, and that video blew up. That did really, really well. And they were like, oh, this is really good. And nobody asked them. Nobody really ever asks them for the old stuff.
Yeah.
And they had this lovely collection of cars, and they were just like, well, what do you want next? Like, you've really impressed us. Like, the video's done good numbers. It really doesn't cost them much at all. All they've got to do is actually drag it out of storage, throw some fuel at it, throw a sponge at it, let me loosen it for a day, and off it goes. And they've just got themselves, 250,000 views and a nice bit of PR. So that really helped me with Audi. And then I got to drive some wild stuff like the Q7 V12, the RS2. That was scary. That's up there in my most moments when someone's trusting me with something quite precious here. And it's their RS2 that was one of their original press cars and only had 3,300 miles on the clock. And it's just like, oh, please don't let anything happen to this car. Like, I'll never live this down. Because it's stuff like the like the 812. Like, if I obliterated that, if I took a corner too fast and if I ripped it in half, it's going to be a very awkward conversation with Ferrari PR, and
I've got to buy it somehow.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, they can make another one.
Yeah.
Whereas some of the other stuff, like the Heritage Fleet stuff, they offer you, they're like, by the way, this is like the only one. Or, there's only 2 of them and the other one's over there in pieces. Like, so you're like, that terrifies me. Expensive cars, I have no worries driving. Like, expensive cars, it's just money. I have an insurance policy. Like, there's a reason we have an insurance policy. It's fine. But then when you get people say like, oh, this Frog Eye Sprite was my granddad's car and he bought it brand new in 1957 and my dad learned to drive in it. It's been in the family for 60 years. And you're just like, I know it's only worth like a few grand, but also it's simultaneously priceless. So it's just like, oh no.
I just have a great fear of damaging anyone else's stuff. With cars, basically. All stuff, really. If someone's lent me something and it gets damaged, I feel horrendous, even if it's not my fault. And I've had a car lent to me by a manufacturer that was parked up and someone managed to hit it, basically. It was fine. They'd reversed out the space next to it and tired the side of the car, which looked awful. And I was like, oh, and they were meant to be picking the car up in about an hour. And I got some stuff and got rid of all the rubber and then looked at it, looked at it. And it was only a couple of scratches in the end. But I was kind of like, you know what? I don't think I'm going to ask for a press car from anyone ever again. I can't deal with this. This is awful.
Oh, it's horrendous, isn't it? It's just like you get heart palpitations. I mean, to be fair, I expect I'm probably far more concerned about it than the PR people are, because I've seen what happens to some press cars. I mean, poor old Honda didn't actually have much luck because I was supposed to drive their new NSX, and it got T-boned by an old lady at a junction. I thought it was just a journalist taking a few too many liberties. No, not the case at all. Like, no, it just got. That's basically their light went green, her light was red. She didn't even notice and just drove straight into the side of it and just completely destroyed it. And that was quite annoying because I was like, is everyone okay? Good. Oh, now I'm annoyed. I'm like, oh, grumble. Like, I really wanted to go in that car, and they were like, yeah, we don't know when we're going to get another one. This is going to take ages. And you do worry about these things. I mean, I'm always like horrendously concerned about damaging someone's stuff. Because they put faith in me. They've put their trust in me, and it's like I want to make sure that trust and faith is rewarded. It's hugely important. I've probably got too much of a social conscience to do the job that I do, because I get really wound up now when people bring me cars with really loud exhausts. The record, okay, I'll tell you the record. That was a CLK black. And it had the, what do they call it? The long tube manifolds, and pretty much, I think, no cats, and possibly not much in the way of silencing in it. I could hear him when he was turning around, not just giving it the beans, when he was turning the car around for drive-by shots, I could hear him a mile away. And when it's just idling and turning, and I can still hear it, you're like, oh no, you're like, if someone doesn't come out and throw something at me today, like, I will be amazed, like, absolutely amazed. So I try and be very careful, because if you are driving past someone's house, 20 times or whatever, like I would get annoyed, I would get annoyed if someone did that here. This is why I actually secretly really love doing classic cars and crap cars. Because if someone brings me like a knackered old Citroen C2, brilliant, absolutely brilliant, because I can kick that car's head in and I probably won't even really worry the speed limit. I mean, you will be able to relate to this. So the other day, I needed to get some noise shots of the 812. Now, the thing with the 812 is, when you've got your foot a little bit of the way down, it's a very different noise it makes to when your foot's all of the way down. The problem is, with an 812, when your foot is all of the way down, that speedo is going up real quick. So you need high RPM to get that best sound out of it. But getting high RPM without really taking a liberty means being pretty much in that car in first and second. So then you've got 800 horsepower in a two-wheel drive car in first and second, and you're deliberately trying to give it the big one. And it's just like, this is quite nerve-wracking. And then I wound up getting a telling off from one of my neighbours who was like, I heard you go down that road. And I'm like, oh yeah, well, you probably did. Now it doesn't bother me too much, because I know I wasn't actually going that fast. What I was doing pulls in first gear, which you'll then edit together to try and make it look like it's a sort of more dynamic, more action-paced scenario. But it's just like, oh no, I'm going to get so told off in this thing.
And that absolutely, trying to do that in that car, trying to give it, that under-load sound requires putting your foot down, and it's got 800 horsepower. And in first gear, it can't take that. And then you're just going really fast. It was funny. I was watching the Love Cars review the other day. They just did the 812G. Funny, the exact same car that's now sat on my driveway. And I was watching it with my friend who'd helped me with the 812 review. And you got Tiff driving the car, and he's like, yeah, I've got full throttle now. And I mean, obviously they edit it and all that jazz, so it's probably a bit different. But I was like, you're not full throttle, Tiff, because we could hear the car going we're like, no, that's not how the car revs. It's like, wham, wham. You're just like, oh no. You were doing what I probably do. Is just you got the throttle on, so it is accelerating, but you're being very gentle. That the first I put my foot down in that car the other day just to see what it would do, and it span until I changed into fifth. And so I can understand entirely why Ferrari are quite cautious about
who and when they give that car out.
Totally.
So it's on the one hand you're like, this is a great honor, like I am being trusted to have this, but equally, so actually I pretty much said with that car, like, it turns everyone that drives it into Uncle Ben, because you keep going around telling everybody, like, with great power comes great responsibility. Because you think, like, there are probably a lot of people out there that think they've experienced a fast car, like my old supercharged M3, 600 odd horsepower. This is not a slow car. You drive that and you're like, no. This is a different thing.
The engine response, everything about that car is like nuts. The first time I pulled out of when I bought mine, drove down the road, got onto some slightly windier stuff, and then was like, let's see what happens. And I was in race, and I put my foot down like quite hard, not like rolled into it, but then gave it some, and immediately you're like, okay, right. Yep. I will back out of this now because I've got a lot of wheel spin and a bit of angle, and I didn't really expect that.
No, I would, anyone that's going to try one of those cars, if they've not if they're not an F12 owner or something, I would probably say to them, like, take it on the dual carriageway, like, get yourself in the middle of two lanes, like, make sure it's perfectly dry, like, leave it in sport.
In sport, exactly.
And then try, and then, like, if that doesn't scare the hell out of you, then do race and then see how you feel about it, because, like, it's amazing. I love it because it's actually a car that really demands of you as a driver. Like, if you want to be on it, like, you can't just muddle through and it's fine. Like, no, you pay attention with that car.
It's got enough power. It's got more than enough power, but there's that thing of like, okay, it's got a lot of grip, but actually it's a front engine rear wheel drive car. Mine's on 4S's, so not like tons of grip, and you can play with it on the throttle. I'm not freaking honing it around corners or anything, but just like you cannot give it full beans. Like, so, and there's all of the bits in between, naturally aspirated engine, that you get to enjoy all of that. But I kind of got back, and my wife is insured on it, and I was like, okay, when you drive this car, I'm just telling you now, be careful. She's really careful anyway, but like, just be careful. And I don't understand how you can just buy that car. You can go in, most people will put it straight into race because they'll be like, oh, it makes better noises, which I think actually some of the 812 versus the F12, it makes all of the same stuff in sport as it does in race, pretty much. Whereas previously you had to have the car in race to make it sound better and everything. But then you get the more responsive throttle and the less traction control and all of the other stuff. So everyone's driving it around in race on cold tires, and funnily enough, you see someone binning it over a bridge. Like,
that was just so I have something with the performance cars I call like the 21-year-old test, and what that is in my head, it probably is a very different thing in other people's heads. To me, that is, imagine you had like a 21-year-old son or nephew or friend or something that had got some car experience, maybe Fiesta ST or something like that. And you knew they're a perfectly sensible, level-headed person that if you said to them, just enjoy it, but take it easy, that they would, they wouldn't feel the need to impress or do silly stuff. So something like an R8, or completely, my neighbour's just bought himself a facelift first generation R8 V10, and I'm like, a sensible 21-year-old, I'd have no problem, none whatsoever, letting them out in that car. I'm quite confident that they'd be fine. Merc A45, same, like, it's fine. And even, to be honest, I think an F8, I would probably feel the same way.
Leave it in sport, but no problem.
Yeah, F8 in sport. When I had the F8, I had that within about 10 miles. You're like, I got it. I know exactly what this car's capable of. I've got complete faith in it and what it does. 812, I'll be like, not a chance. Like, absolutely, no way. You're not going anywhere near it, sunshine. Like, love you to pieces, just no, because it is. And the F12 was one of the first cars I've driven. I hear a lot of people talk about some cars as being like, oh, they're undrivable, they're wild, they try and go sideways, when you're not expecting them. People always talk about like old TVRs that way. In truth, I've only driven maybe a handful of cars that I think actually deserve that. The rest of the time, I think maybe it's people that getting something with 500 horsepower and think that you can just mash the throttle and there won't be consequences. And also tyre technology has come on, quite a long way for some of these cars. So maybe in 1995, they were scary. Now PS4S is on, they're not. But yeah, the F12 and the 812 definitely fall into that. I wasn't asking for it to go sideways category, but it did. And maybe the only car being worse is the CLK. Because the CLK, you look at it and you go, but it doesn't even have that much torque. Like, I don't even understand how it could be so leery. And yet they found a way.
Yeah, a friend of mine had a CLK, I think it was a CLK Black Series, but it had so much torque. You literally just trying to pull out of a parking space, he'd be like lighting up wheels just to like quarter throttle.
It's so easy to do. Nuts car.
I had a really funny one with when I drove the 812. So weirdly, the first 812 I've driven was my 812. And I spent a reasonable amount of time in an F12 before then. Someone asked me, there's definitely been worse things I've done in my life, to drive a car from London to Stockholm for a rally. I was going to be flying out, I was taking pictures, and he knew that I used to driving cars and whatnot and all that stuff, and was like, I need my F12 to get to Stockholm, but I can't really be bothered to pay for the transport to go to Stockholm. Do you fancy driving it? I was like, yes. Through Germany, Autobahn, everything. And I got out of that car and I didn't think it was nutty at all. Like, slightly, but not really. And that's even like doing the sort of silly things of from low speed, low gears, giving it a lot of gas. I think that car was like 150 horsepower down or something, because it come over from the UAE, I think, and had dubious service history or something. But getting in the 812, putting my foot down to the level I put the foot down, I know it's a different engine. I know it's bigger, more torque, blah, 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 blah. But I felt like it has 300 more horsepower than the car I previously drove.
Yeah, no, the F12 I drove, I was moving it from the guy's house to this location he'd got for us, and I was at 15 mile an hour, and I gently pressed the accelerator, and the car just did that. And at that point, I was like, okay, that's how it's going to be, is it? Because I drove on the same day. He also had a Bentley Brooklands, which again is the car sort of reputed to be like, it's this great big tire slaying, demon of a thing. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure if you wanted it to do that, it would. But actually, when I drove it, the Bentley was more the sort of casual, like you put your foot down and slowly the torque appears, and it's very serene, very wafty, like absolutely not an animal. Whereas the F12, granted, that was still on its original tyres, which definitely wasn't helping. Because they're probably 5-6 years old by that time. But that was fun.
I think tyres has got to be is a huge part of it, because my F40, driving that car, that doesn't scare me. It doesn't scare in the wet. Drive it fast. I wouldn't do that. I'm not going to play that game. But I think the tyre tech now, we know the tyre tech now is significantly better than it was when those cars came out. On cold tyres, it will just spin them up, fine. But driving that car doesn't freak me out in any way, shape or form. It's wicked fun and whatever, but I'm not scared of the boost or any of that sort of stuff. But getting in the 812, and yes, it will be, I've only driven it a couple of 100 miles and I haven't driven it on track and all that sort of stuff to get used to how it handles. But just the power level versus the grip level, I'm like, okay, no, this is, you can't just keep your foot in it in this car.
No, not at all. I mean, the 550 I'm having issues with at the minute. I don't know what it's like with the F40, but the 550 is a bit of a devil to get tyres for. They are out there, but it's that case of I want good tyres and a matching set front and rear. And the only one that's really easy to get is the Bridgestones, and I don't want those. I don't really want Pirellis on it. I would prefer Michelin's, and you go on, it'll be like, oh yeah, no, you can get these sizes. Then of course you find out that actually 3 out of the 4 companies that say they can supply fronts for mine are actually out of stock. But then I keep hearing rumors that the tires are actually discontinued. So I hope option number 4 really does have tires, and I don't just order them and find out that actually they were ghost tyres and they're just never ever going to appear. And then I've ordered 2 rears that are now not going to match the fronts. But that car is on, I think they're 2014 dated tyres. In the dry, if you're not being silly, it's perfectly fine. But if you spit on the floor, like it went sideways on me in 4th on the motorway. So, you have to respect it. And Ferraris are the worst. If anyone turns up to me with a Ferrari or a Lamborghini or something of that ilk for review, first thing I check is the dates on the tyres, because they just don't get changed.
Yeah, and
it's lethal.
It's because most Ferraris, it seems, don't get driven that much. So you're never wearing out the tyres. Like 20,000 miles, that'll last 20 years. 40 years, 50 years. Yeah, it's 550. Talk to me about it. This is a car I really like. I've not driven one. What's the journey of that and your experience with it as well?
So I always wanted a Ferrari. Was always arrogant enough from a young age to assume that one day I would have a Ferrari. The matter of how I would get there was obviously just, an irrelevance. That's unimportant, And then I found myself, so I'd never bought a car on finance in my life ever, including the Lotus. But because with YouTube I was starting to develop a regular income, the ability to get finance was starting to present itself. And also I would trust myself to know that I could, afford it. So I was saving up some money for a deposit on what wasn't specifically going to be the 550 at the time, but was going to be something special, because I'd sold my Evora a couple of years earlier, and because YouTube was basically a black hole for all my money, my actual, when I started YouTube, I had on the driveway a brand new Lotus Evora 400, a lovely Lotus Elise 111R, and a Lotus XL, and an E46 M3. Then, 3 and a bit years into YouTube, and what I had on the driveway was a old 996 C4S and my supercharged M3. So the value of my fleet had basically halved in that time, and I didn't have 50 grand in the bank, and that's just the cost of doing YouTube. But things were improving. So I started looking for different stuff. I was looking, fun enough, at Gallardo's, but I was sort of pretty much put off by all the horror stories. The dream Ferrari was 355, but an example that I would want, which I would want right-hand drive. I don't want to put up with the left-hand drive. I would want manual, and I potentially want a coupe as well. And that, conveniently, is the most expensive combination of all.
Yes.
And I'd probably want an early one without the ugly airbag steering wheel and all that jazz. So that was a car that just seemed beyond reach. I also started looking at a lot of other stuff. Aston Martin Vanquish, DBS, those kind of things. I considered a couple of Porsches, but I didn't really think they were sort of special enough.
You wanted
as horrible as it's
V12.
Yeah, V12 was quite nice. And the 550 was the sort of car that I just kept coming back to. I'd never driven one. So like yourself, the first time I ever drove a 550 was after I'd handed over all the money for mine and I got in it to bring it home. I remembered from, I believe it was Apocalypse Clarkson from 96 or 97, where they called it the best handling car in the world ever. So I was like, well, that's got to be worth something, even 20-odd-year-old information. If it was a good handling car, then it must still be quite decent. And I thought, I really like cars that are strict 2-seaters. I don't like 2+2s because I hate this sort of weird unused seats in the back. I think it detracts from the specialness of the car. I do big journeys in my cars. So, one of the things that counts against, say, the Gallardo is the fact the boot is microscopic and you just can't really get a lot in there. The 345, like I said, was a bit too much. 360s I did quite like, but, Sam's kind of got that market wrapped up. And although I wasn't really buying a car for YouTube, YouTube certainly has to be a consideration. So I don't really want to go and follow a route somebody else is already doing. So Sam's got 360, great for him. Seb had gone and got his 430 Scud. So there was a few different options. And every time I went looking for something, every single time I went on Auto Trader, I just found myself back looking at 550s. Because I was like, they're 2-seat, they're a V12 manual Ferrari, and they are, as these things go, reasonably affordable. But the majority of them was still well beyond my budget. What I was hoping to buy, the other thing that factored in was actually one of the few upsides, because COVID had happened. I filmed way in advance. So I was having content come out, but I wasn't going out and filming. So I was actually saving up my deposit quite quickly. So I was hoping to maybe even be able to buy a car without having to do finance at all. And there were one or two examples that cropped up. I went and looked at one, and it was absolutely atrocious. It was the shabbiest looking 550 you've ever seen in your life. And the guy I was quite miffed with, because he had clearly put up pictures that were way out of date of this car. The thing was a state. And as you know, anything fixing on a Ferrari, just like however much you think it's going to be, like just quadruple it, and then you're probably close. And you know, so that annoyed me. And there was this other car that became the car I bought, and it was up for sale, and it was up for quite a bit more than I wound up paying for it. And I kept talking with the owner of the car, who turned out to be a real enthusiast. He actually has quite a nice collection of other stuff as well. He was pretty much selling it because his Diablo GT had actually come back from its restoration ahead of time. And so he's one of these gentlemen that, you know, he's got the money to keep all these cars, but he liked to keep them at home. And he had only limited space at the house. So the 550 was just the one that had to go. And I had actually made him an offer before, and he turned it down and said no. And I'd gone and seen this really scraggly silver car. It wasn't even the colour that I wanted. So I originally had this idea of, like, you know what, I'll buy this car that's a heap, because then what I can do is I'll repaint it a different colour, you know, I'll retrim the interior, I'll make whatever I want to make out of it, because if it's already a scraggly car that was unloved, nobody's going to really be upset at me about it. But there was also this Rosso Corsa with cream and Bordeaux car that kept, you know, teasing me. And I was so upset with this this silver one. I'd driven down, it was baking hot, I'd driven down in my S2000, and the guy basically at the end of it, he just said to me, like, oh, well, yeah, at least you've had a nice drive out. And I was like, I'm not a violent man, but I'm like, I will swing for you if you've let me come 2.5 hours down and drove, like, you know, 80, 90 miles to come and look at this car that is just completely not what you've described it as.
Yeah.
Anyway, on the way back, I was so upset. I basically pulled over at the side of on the side of the motorway somewhere and phoned my finance guy and said to him, like, look, if I offer this other guy with the red car this amount, here's my deposit, here's what you'd have to finance, like, do you think we can do it? I'd been working really hard all year. I was like, I got rid of all my debts, I got rid of my credit cards, I got rid of my overdraft. Like, I was trying to be like, and I'm awful with money. I am totally awful with money. So I was like, look, I really want this car. Like, it just, you know, when you get that car, like, you're in the classifieds and you're like, that's it, that's it. But it was out of reach. And so I said to him, like, do you think we can make this deal happen? And he was like, yeah, I reckon we can. But here's the price. Here's the limit. And the limit was lower than what I'd already offered the guy.
Nice.
So I thought, okay. So I phoned the guy and I said to him, look, I'll be completely straight with you here. Like, here's who I am. Here's what I do. I'm looking at buying this car. It's going to be my first Ferrari. And he's like, I promise you, I was like, it's not going to go in a garage. It's going to sit on my driveway. I'm going to look at it every day. I'm going to drive the arse off of it. You know, I'm going to take it all around Europe. I'm going to do loads of stuff with this car. Like, I will use it and I will love it. Like, but this is my budget. Like, this is honestly to the penny what my guy said I can afford.
Yeah.
And I know he'd already turned down offers to sell it to dealers for more than that sum. But he said yes.
Nice.
So I also had spoken to a few people that knew the car and knew him, and they basically, and these are specialists, and they were like, yeah, if it's his car, just buy it. Like, you don't need to worry about getting inspected. Like, it'll be as good as he says it is, and that luckily turned out to be true. Nice. So I had the car. You know what it's like. You buy a new car and it's a used one. Like, the first time it goes on a ramp somewhere, and you're just like, oh, this is the moment where I find out if I've been stitched up like a kipper or not. And I bought it. Incredible day. Drove it home, just smitten with it. Within the first week, I took it to Brands Hatch, took it round track.
Nice.
Because it was with Open Track, and part of Open Track is they give you free photos. So nice. I was like, I fancy some photos of the car, and basically it'll cost about the same to get a photographer out as it will to just take it around brands. And I thought it would be funny to just take this, 20-odd-year-old Ferrari, and I was definitely the slowest thing on track. Like, as it turns out, like the tires lasted about, I don't know, 6 laps, but that was okay because the brakes only lasted 4. So it was a Brands Indy as well, which is the worst place because the car's got power, but you haven't got anywhere to use it.
Just got corners.
But it was great because I was the slowest car on the day, and everyone loved me because they were like, "But you've brought your Ferrari on track. Like, you've brought your old Ferrari here on a track day. Like, what a legend you are!"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah. Cheers, everyone.
I am. Thank you very much."
Yeah. And it was so funny because there was a track evening. And that day they had like one of these, prestige track days. So there was an LFA coming out as we was going in, that sort of stuff, mostly McLaren and that sort of stuff. And all these people were driving out looking at the 550. And I was like, yeah, well, if all their cars are much more money than my car. And then I wound up in a garage next to a bloke who came over to the car and he was like, "Oh, mate," he's like, "the 550, he's like, it's one of the best cars I've ever had. Like, it's brilliant." He's like, "Oh, I sold mine years ago. Terrible mistake. Like, shouldn't have done it." And I was like, "Oh, so what you got now?" And he's like, "Oh, 599 GTO." And I was like, "Oh, that's quite nice." He's like, "Yeah, it's all right, but the 550, like," he's like, "there was nothing like that." And I was like, "Okay, I guess I must have bought the right car here." And then, because the 550 is another one of those cars that it's like everyone knows about it, but you try and find stuff on YouTube about the 550. Like when I was doing my research, I tried to find all the 550 videos I could. Harry did about the only good one. That's it. All the others were either really old, so you're talking like from when the car was new, and it's an old Top Gear from '97 or whatever, or they just weren't very good videos at all. And so I was like, yeah, I'm buying this thing pretty blind. And as it turned out, people absolutely love the car, and luckily, so do I. It's been spectacular. It's been really good to me, that car.
Brilliant. It's one of those cars I look at, and when I saw you had one, I was like, oh yeah, that's cool. Like
come and have a go sometime.
It's just damn cool. Yeah, no, I'd be well keen for that. During that, have you had any of the issues that people worry about, buying an old V12 car, like obscene bills or anything like that?
Well, one of the things that pushed me to purchase the particular one that I have is the fact that the previous owner had spent 17 grand on it. So what had happened was he's the sort of gentleman where he sent the car off to the garage to have its clutch and cam belt done. So they were only 2 years old when I got the car. So I was like, that's good. Obviously, the cam belt will need doing, but it's actually not so expensive to do the cam belt on a 550 anyway. And also, the clutch obviously only had like a few hundred miles on it. So it's like, okay, that's not a worry. I got the car, had it looked over, and honestly, it's given me a couple of bits of grief. We found that there was an old tracker in it, had short-circuited and was draining my battery really quick, so we managed to fix that. I had an issue recently where the the fuel cutoff switch failed, and it was making the car indicate left in the middle of the night. Nice. That was annoying. And other than that, it's going in about 2 weeks' time for its first service under my ownership. I'm not expecting any nasty surprises, but no, generally I have spent money on it. I've done the Ferrari Premium program, which they've helped me a little bit with, and that's more preventative stuff, and I'm quite fine doing that. But no, it's actually been really good. It does like a drink, but it also got me from Scotland to home in basically one tank of fuel. It did over 400 miles to a tank.
That seems pretty good. I presume it's got quite a big tank, but
yeah. Oddly, here's the really weird thing, right? Is that everyone I know likes to accuse Ferrari of kind of, maybe not being entirely honest with some of their numbers and figures that they quote. The one on the 550 that I don't actually believe is the size of the fuel tank, because Ferrari tell me that it's 114 litres, and in reality I think it's probably closer to 100, and that's it's the most Italian thing I can imagine to try and exaggerate, is the size of your fuel tank. I just don't know what the benefit
Well,
to them is going to be for that. But there you go.
have you filled it up to almost overflowing? As in like click, click, click,
Yes.
click,
Yes.
click, click. Because the F40 is a bit like that. It's almost the flip. I think it's got two 60-litre bags.
Your
in
bladders, haven't you, in that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're either 50 or 60. But it goes down. It uses fuel at a rate that definitely doesn't equate to 120 litres of fuel. I think you have 50 litres left when it gets to empty.
Yeah.
But when you get to full, I've managed to put another 25 litres in.
Really?
Like, it's just like sloshing between the tanks and like working the air out and all that sort of stuff. And you're there just like click, 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 click. But having now done it once, I know like 20 litres is a lot. That's a lot of extra. Like
that's a heck of a
that'll get
lot,
you at least 5 more miles down the road. So these things are important.
I found that with the 812. I was like, when you're being gentle with it, it's actually not completely horrific on fuel.
Yeah.
But like, if you want to start having fun, like miles per gallon very quickly turns into gallons per mile.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
It's unreal.
I've only driven mine back from the dealership and then around town a little bit. So I've done like a tank.
Yeah.
And well, Ferrari very cleverly don't put an MPG gauge in their cars. They're like, no, not something that's going to be helpful to anyone. You need to know how much fuel you've got and how many miles to empty. Yeah. But I think I put in a decent amount of fuel the other day. It was taking ages to go in, so I didn't quite do it all day. And I think it said you've got 160 miles of range. I was like, ooh.
Well, the 550 is like that because I can do 400 odd miles to a tank, but I also did about 3/4 of a tank, probably in about half an hour on track.
Yeah.
So it's the ability to drink fuel is like so broad. It's like it could be here. The 550 I worked out, I was doing 22 to the gallon on the motorway, which I'm quite impressed for an old V12 from the era when nobody cared like how much fuel it drank. Like I was legitimately impressed with that. I thought it was going to be like 18 all the time, like regardless. So I was braced for it to be horrendous. Actually, it's been okay.
And I think the 812 is like 25 or 26 or something. I haven't worked it out yet, but it's something like that on a long journey in 7.
Yeah,
sure.
It just depends.
It's in the single digits.
The thing my dad always used to tell me is that with the Ferraris, you just imagine that the throttle pedal is connected to a bucket of petrol, and just the more you push it, the more it's tipping out. And to be fair, it's probably one of the most accurate things he's ever said to me. So
yeah,
that's how it feels.
An engine of that size, like 6 litres, 6.5 litres or whatever, like that's a lot. There's a lot of litres in. Yeah, it's not surprising they get through it. One of the companies we haven't talked about, and actually was the first time I came across you. I don't know how you. I wasn't actually interested to know how you feel about this now. I've written the McLaren Saga down as a note.
It was gonna have to come up, wasn't it? Yeah.
Can you give a little summary for those people that have not come across you or come across this of what happened, how you went about it,
if they know
how you feel about it?
About me, they will know about the McLaren Saga. Yeah. In short, my friend and his father both purchased brand new McLarens from McLaren Manchester, which is in Wilmslow, just outside Manchester, about 2 years ago now, 18 months ago. So they bought a 720S is what the dad bought, and the son bought a 570S. It was the most awful, shambolic experience I've ever known from any car dealership. I mean, so between them, they spent something like £400,000. And when it came collection day, rather than the usual car under a cover, there you go, because they dragged me along. I was basically the taxi to get there.
Yeah.
And they'd also said to me, like, I didn't ask to film it. They asked me to film it. They said, look, it's going to be a big day for us both. We're really excited about this. Like, hopefully it'll be a really nice thing. Do you want to just come along? We'll give you some petrol money and you can film it and make a video at the same time. So I was like, yeah, sure, why not? It might be a little bit of thing for the dealership or whatever. I was at 40,000 subs back then. So I was like becoming an entity, but, I would not be. It's very different from how things are now. So anyway, the cars weren't even at the dealership. They drove them from 9 miles away. So the cars being revealed to the owner was they literally just got driven there. It then turned out that the 570 was damaged. Like it was cracked. There was a crack that big in the front of the car. James and I wound up staying overnight locally to try and give them time to fix this problem, which they then actually didn't do. It was then agreed that the car was going to go back. It then got really bad really quickly. We then wound up having to get another McLaren as a courtesy car. That broke. Then they had one other McLaren as a courtesy car. That had broken as well. It all went very, very wrong. The funny thing about the video itself, so the video is called The Truth About Buying McLaren, a masterclass in how not to deal with customers, because unfortunately, you would think in this situation, something like that happens. I mean, like, you know, like, you'd think the sort of customer that these people are, you know, you're £300,000 spending on a car, you'd think the dealership would be like, yeah, if a fly spits on your car, they'd be like, oh, I'm so sorry, we'll clean that, we'll sort it, don't worry, it'll all be done. They just couldn't give a... They did not care. No one cared. No one gave a toss, and it was very frustrating. You're like, guys, like the amount of money is almost irrelevant. Like you've bought a car, like buying a car, whether it's a £2,000 car or a £2 million car, it's probably a lot of money for you because the cars are expensive things. Yeah, you know, so it should always be a special experience, and the car dealership experience should be a positive one. I think in general, car dealers is a awful thing. That's a topic for another video. Anyway, these people were atrocious. But the problem I had was this. I'd filmed a review of the 570 and a review of the 720, but the 570 wound up getting rejected. The 570 wound up going back because it kept having problems. The windscreen on it cracked. All sorts of stuff went wrong. So it got replaced with a 600 LT. So the problem was, so on Monday... Here's my friend James's brand new McLaren 570S. And then on Tuesday, here's his dad's 720S. And then on Wednesday, here's my friend James's new McLaren 600 LT. Now, in reality, 2 months had actually passed. Yeah. But I thought, well, it's going to look a bit odd if on Monday he's got one McLaren and on Wednesday he's got another. So I really should do a video trying to explain what's happened here. So I just thought I'll do that, and the whole thing had just gotten absolutely out of hand. We'd gone to Woking at that point. They were not productive. So I just thought, okay, all right, we've worked and worked and worked, and the amount, nobody would generally believe it, which is why it didn't go in the video, but there was a huge amount of other stuff that happened that I cut out of the video because I thought it would just be like entirely unbelievable. It's mad stuff. But so I put the video out simply as a way of explaining what happened. The big part of it, I think the selling point was that when these guys bought the cars, they both got asked to sign a document that essentially stated that none of the panels will line up, the aircon won't work very well, the aircon refrigerant will escape. If there's problems with it at high speed, there's nothing really that they want to do about it because, you know, if the car falls apart at 150, it's not their problem. All this stuff. And it was a document with loads of typos and all sorts of stuff. Yeah. And they claimed came from McLaren, but it was very obvious that it didn't. And McLaren were not happy about it, so I should point that out. So I put that out. It turned out the video wound up being like a smash hit. It's still my biggest video. It's got nearly 900,000 views on it. And it sort of made the channel over Christmas, which is good and bad. It got people in, and luckily a lot of them stayed because I was very worried. You know, you get a channel has a spike of growth. Yeah. You're like, are these people, are they going to hit the subscribe button and then go away? Like, do I have to make a dealer bashing video every week now if I want to keep the audience? You know, what's going to happen to me? Also, what very few people want to consider is the fact that I was making this video basically sort of having a pretty big go at McLaren Manchester and McLaren themselves. And as far as I was aware, that video could have got 5,000 views. Yeah. And I opened myself up to some fairly serious angry letters from McLaren's legal department. And I was told in no uncertain terms by several people that knew McLaren, that's exactly what was going to happen. You say anything negative about them and you're going to get a very angry letter from one of their, trained attack solicitors. Yeah. This never happened. To this date, McLaren have never, ever spoken to me directly about the videos. There were a couple of follow-ups just to kind of tie everything up. It got a lot worse before it got better. And yeah, it really, really upset me because that so much of what happened was entirely unnecessary. Like none of it needed to happen. Like, they're a British brand. I love them. And it pained me so much because I'd had some issues with Lotus, and I mean, Lotus have always got issues, haven't they? But you could see McLaren following exactly the same path as Lotus, and you're like, it's going to end up one way. Like, this is just how it's going to be. And yet they just seem totally blind. And to be honest, if there's a word that sums up McLaren as I dealt with them, it would be arrogance. They just think, well, we're McLaren. And they didn't care about anyone. They don't care about their dealers. They definitely don't care about their customers. Like, even when we went to Woking and spoke to them, it was very, very obvious that unless you'd spent, 5 or 6 million quid buying cars from them, they just don't care about you. I wound up bumping into Mike Fluitt. He did not even have the time of day to give to 2 customers that had spent 400 grand with the company. That I have very little respect for. You'd have thought if there's someone getting a private tour of the factory, you'd at least sort of be, hello, I'm Mike, I'm really sorry, I'm really busy, lovely to meet you, go away. I was at Morgan recently, and it was about as opposite an experience as you can imagine. Not much carbon fibre at the Morgan factory, but I did bump into the CEO there, and he at least said, hello, really, really so sorry, I'm a bit busy today, but, hope you're enjoying the place. And these things make a difference.
They make a huge difference.
I still get a lot of hate from a lot of McLaren people. I'm not even sure they're McLaren owners because they're probably not.
Yeah,
but I think it's McLaren fanboys. But I get some real bile, and I can post up the most innocuous thing. I remember when people were speculating about what became Artura. Someone posted like a prototype picture of it, and I just commented and said, "Oh yeah, it'll be a V6 hybrid, and they've developed a new gearbox for it," which turned out to be entirely true. Yeah. And that wasn't exactly secret information at the time. And someone just laid into me, like completely in the comments, just totally had to go, "Oh, you're McLaren bashing." I really don't understand how saying it's got a V6 and a new gearbox is McLaren bashing. And people think I hate the cars. People think I hate the company. I don't. I hate what the company did. And I think it was wrong, but the week the video came out, there were 4 reviews of McLaren cars, each of which got pretty much a glowing review because they're brilliant. But sadly, there are things companies can do that I won't forgive. I get people to this day messaging me with similar stories, asking if I'll make a video, and I'll say absolutely no to all of them. Yeah. Partly because I don't want to be associated with just doing that all the time, but secondly because the only reason I did the first video was that I was there. Yeah.
It's a really tricky one, that one, and everyone has bad experiences over the years with various manufacturers, dealers, but if a certain person, someone's done something, and there is an element of, this sort of like journalistic side of if you showcase your life to some extent, cars and whatnot, and you are really preachy about a brand, and you never mention any of the bad things, or there's a brand. Let's say like McLaren, they've not lent me a press car anytime soon. I don't necessarily think they will. They might do. I would really love to drive them because I really like the cars. But I have a lot of friends who've owned McLarens or own McLarens still. And there have been a lot of issues over the years, some of which have generally all have been resolved. Some of them take a long time. Some people have had cars away from them for most of a year for things to be sorted out. Things seem to take a long time to get resolved. But that sort of stuff. And this is probably why I would find it really hard to buy a McLaren. I think if you've got a car that's okay, I've got a friend that's got a 12C and it seems to be sorted and good. And I had a friend who had a 720S that seemed to be sorted. But if you've got one that seems to start going wrong, chances are it seems like that car might keep going wrong.
Absolutely. The thing that frustrated me perhaps most off the back of the videos is there's a whole heap of owners who basically assumed I just made everything up.
That's weird.
And I don't understand. Like I said, I took a risk of doing enormous damage to myself with the video because, for all I know, Ferrari and Porsche and Bentley and everyone could turn around and go, oh, that Jayemm, he did a real nasty piece on McLaren. He's said some awful things about them, like, oh, I don't know if we want to take a chance really on that. Like, they could have just said no. As it turned out, I actually gained a lot more respect amongst a lot of industry people because they knew that I'd been very honest about what had happened, and amongst a lot of my audience it did. But yeah, there were a lot of people out there that just assumed because they owned a McLaren and that had never broken, that must mean that everyone's experience is like that. And I don't understand, and I've tried to push it in all the videos I made, that it is really perfectly possible for both things to be true. Like, you could buy a McLaren and have a perfectly decent, nice, fine time with no problems, or you could buy a McLaren and it'll be a complete and total nightmare. I don't think there's any car brand really that has only one of the two extremes. I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that, bought Morris Marinas and they thought they're absolutely fine. But unfortunately, like to try and it reminded me a lot of my Lotus days, where I'm like, a lot of the biggest problem that Lotus had, I think, was the Lotus customers themselves. As nice people as they are, some of them had gotten used to the bad treatment from the manufacturer so much, when anyone ever complained about it and said, hang on a minute, bits falling off the car surely shouldn't be acceptable, you'd be shot down in flames and told, you wally, this is a Lotus, that's what they do, they're light, they're lovely. And it's like, yeah, but if a Porsche customer tries to buy one of these and the dealer serves them awful coffee, or it doesn't have cup holders and no Bose stereo, like, sorry, but if you want the company you love to succeed, you have to accept that there are other customers that are not you. And some people, and even actually my petrol-heady friends, sometimes it's very hard to get them to understand there are customers that don't think like you do. In fact, actually, as petrol heads, we are the minority.
Absolutely.
Us people that care about how it drives, how it sounds, is it naturally aspirated or not, what's the steering feel like, what are the brakes like, we are definitely the minority of car buyers. It's only because a lot of the people working at the factories quite like these things as well that we're lucky. I mean, a good car coming out these days is borderline an accident, in terms of, like, from a petrol-heady perspective. Or you've got a manufacturer that somehow, like Kia's randomly, they all drive really nicely. And the fact that happens is a miracle, because most of their buyers would not care if suddenly one day the steering had absolutely no feel whatsoever. We get really upset about it, but I did a video the other day with the Lotus Evora, and it's like, Clarkson loved the Evora. It didn't make them sell any. All journalists basically hated the X6M. Like, what an awful car. What would you want one of these for? Sells like hotcakes. Like, I don't think we have anywhere near as much influence over the general buying public as probably a lot of people think. I would hate the idea of someone going and buying a car exclusively based off the back of one of my reviews. That would terrify me.
Yeah, and everyone has their own opinions for whatever reasons and backstory and whatever that is in. And I'm sure you get it. I get it every now and then. Someone's like, oh, I've been looking at this car. I've been influenced by what you've said. Maybe I've bought one down the line. And you're like, great, I'm glad we agree. Like, I'm glad, but like, I'm perfectly happy for someone to turn around. I got not a lot, that's an exaggeration. Some flack, not flack really, just questions over my 812. Like, why did you buy this car? You talk all the time about lightweight, manual, involving sports cars and how cars have got too much power, too fast, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, that's a very valid question. That is a very valid question. My answer to that question was, well, I've realized what I use my cars for. And I still have some lightweight sports cars that can be used for fun driving and whatnot. But equally, I do weekends away with my wife. I travel a lot on motorways. I travel a lot around town. So having a lovely sounding car that has paddles and has a big boot is actually quite usable. Yeah,
I'm looking for my next car, and one of my criteria is it must be automatic. I've never gone looking for a car. In fact, previously when I've gone looking for a car, it's always must be manual. My biggest issue at the minute is I'm looking for something that's larger than my 1 Series and is automatic, and my biggest struggle at the minute is not buying a V8 Vantage, because I'm like, the petrol head in me will just go, oh, V8 Vantage, well, I quite like an Aston on the driveway, because wouldn't it be great to have an Aston, a Ferrari and a Lamborghini? I'd be like, no, James, you wally, you're going to wind up with 3 cars that all do sort of similar things, and the one car you need is not going to be there anymore. And it's like, oh no.
But yeah, I had the similar sort of situation. I realized and doing the podcast has definitely sort of highlighted this. I ask everyone, like, a 5-car garage. You'll get this question later. And occasionally I get asked what I would pick, and I do ruminate on the topic. And like right now, I own 6 cars, so I would have to lose a car to have a 5-car garage. But you sit there and go, okay, but if I sold everything and started again, what would I buy? And often, I think for most people, the answer is different to what you currently own, because you get attached to various cars and whatever. And I'm sitting there and I realized at one point in time, I was like, I own a bunch of involving driver-focused sports car type vehicles. And I had 3 or 4 at the same time, all slightly different, but exactly the same niche. That was the time when I was driving my M2, had an old 911 that's like hotted up for that sort of stuff. I had the F40 and I had my G3 RS. And any given day, you could take all of them pretty much, and they would do pretty much the same thing. And I was like, what are you doing? Like, you want to have, like, if you're going to have 5 cars, they should do something different.
Yeah.
Like,
and I've got a limited size driveway here, so the Lamborghini was a real issue because that was a car unexpectedly acquired, and I'm like, yeah, this doesn't really do anything particularly, like, it's my first supercar, but from a practical standpoint it doesn't actually do anything new. So it's like, yeah, I've got my Celica's coming back, so I was like, yeah, this is going to be hard, because I keep trying to slim down the driveway and it keeps failing miserably. So this is why the 1 Series is going, because I was like, it's just not quite big enough to fill that. The 1 Series is like the other car. You know, like, if I can't take the Honda or the Ferrari or the Lamborghini or the Toyota, you're like, I need the other car has to definitely be able to work in all seasons, in all weathers, you know, with however many passengers you're ever likely to take. Like, it's got to be able to do that. And the 1 Series can't. So it's like, yeah, I need to get something, and it really, really does have to be sensible. Like, and it's painful because it's going to be not entirely sensible. You know, I'm still a car YouTuber. I'll try and justify it somehow, but you know, it's tough. It's tough.
And would that be your only, if you, when you replace it, are you going to get an auto of sorts?
Yeah, that's the hope. That's the aim. Like, it's not I'm entirely ruling out a manual. It's just that I know in my heart that an auto would be better. What I want is an automatic box that's good enough that, you know, when it comes to having some fun in the twisties, it's actually still somewhat involving. You know, so some of the older cars are doing, like some of the older Jags, like S-Type and that, and the XK, the gearbox is just not good enough. Like, no. it's a fine auto box, but as a manual, it's rubbish. So I'm trying to find something that's, you know, recent enough that the box actually is not horrible to manually operate, but then is also good enough that when you're just driving around, it's nice and comfy. So that rules out obviously all of the single clutch boxes and that sort of stuff. Yeah.
I've had a double clutch as a daily for years, and it's great. It's great. Although, actually, I've now just got an electric car. A small electric car for town.
Did consider an electric car, but it's just the maths isn't working for me at the minute.
It doesn't make... I sold my S4 Avant, which was a bloody amazing car. Like, really good, reasonably good on fuel, blah, 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 all that stuff, loads of space, and bought a little Peugeot E208. And they eventually... But basically... the same price, which is ridiculous because the Audi is like quite a lot nicer. But I wanted a small electric car, and I was like, look, that's just this. You're just accepting the cost of what you've decided you want to do. Interesting. I had a couple of. I asked the audience or some other people if they had any questions for you.
Oh, there's at least one guy on Pistonheads who said he had a question, so I really should do his question, whatever it is, if you've got it.
I can ask. I can go through. I've only got a couple. Someone said, "Are you going to put some?" I've never even heard of them. Fiamengi headers on your 550.
Oh yeah. So there's a guy. It's Fabio Fiamengi. He makes these 6-into-1 exhaust manifolds for the car, so it would make the 550 sound like your 812. That's what, because the old 550s and that, they sound quite different. Even the Enzo sounds very different to like how the F12 and the A12 sound. That's in the manifold. So you get this like, okay, I've not got quite as many fingers, but it's literally they all meet at the same time like that.
Yeah.
And that's what gives it that real wail and scream. That was part of my original plan. However, now I've decided with the 550 to go down the originality and the Classic A route. Unfortunately, no. So it will be always something that I think about, but no, it's not going to happen.
Is that a similar sort of thing to the old Mercs, the like S600s that people make sound like Zondas?
Yeah, F-Spot, wasn't it, did that?
Yeah.
Yes, that's what it is. If you want your car to sound like an F1 car, it's the manifolds where you're going to dramatically... Because if you change like the back box and stuff, all you're really doing is making it louder.
Yeah.
Whereas if you want to change the tone of the sound, it's the manifolds and the wizardry that goes on there changes it quite a bit. Also, changing the exhaust on a 550 will change its character quite a bit, because Ferrari did a lot of work with the exhaust to try and make it work with the engine, so that's one of the things they like to do. So I think that's one of the reasons that you don't have like a exhaust valve control and stuff on the Ferraris. So if you put an aftermarket system on the 550, you'll actually lose a chunk of low down torque, which is what the car's actually really good at.
Do you have
kind of
valves on that car?
There are valves on it, yeah.
All right. Yeah, because you generally gain a little bit of torque low down by having the valves, but the annoying thing is if you have them open all the time, or at least on a switch, they do sound a lot better, but you lose that little bit of...
Always the problem with my Lotus set was, it's like, do I want the noise, or does it actually perform? And it's always like, does it perform better? Or, does it perform better close or open? Or is it just because I'm hearing it louder, I'm thinking it's faster? You're like, I don't know what's going on. But no, sadly, no, it's actually going to be made even quieter, because mine's had a midsection delete, so it needs to go back to stock. So the 550 is going to wind up sounding like not very much at all, but that is how they were. And actually for that car in particular, I don't quite mind that. I like the idea of the sort of nice gentleman express type thing with it. That was the design brief for the car.
Yeah, people said to me with the 812 straight away, people were like, well, when are you going to get some Novitec pipes for it? I was like, no, it's like plenty loud enough already, and I want to be able to use it. Whereas I've owned cars previously, and I own cars that are stupidly loud, and you start them up, and I love going doing your early morning 4 a.m. photo shoot or something, just for fun, go see what's going on. You start up a car that's like 125 decibels, your neighbours are really not very happy.
Yeah, I get on with my neighbours at present, and I want to kind of maintain that. I mean, the 812 GTS is still perfectly loud enough for me, and that will be quieter than your car.
Yeah.
So it's like,
it's perfect. It's a really good volume now. Like in car, cruising, totally fine. Put the window down a little bit, use some more revs. There was one, and this might have been it. Someone was asking about the PH vloggers thread, and said, what's it like to deal directly with feedback, especially negative? Because there's for the people that have not come across it, there is a Piston Heads vloggers sort of thread. I don't particularly frequent it, but people like to give their thoughts on whatever's going on, and I believe you go in and say hello every now and then.
Yeah, I do. I try and do it where I can, because whenever I find my name being mentioned somewhere, I do like to kind of stick my head in, especially if my sort of good name is being dragged through the mud. I try and I was sort of always saw myself on that thread as the kind of little YouTuber voice, because Tim was in it for quite a bit, but he's sort of bowed out, understandably so. But yeah, I just try and present sometimes some sort of justification or explanation for how certain things are, because some stuff is kind of blindingly obvious and some of it is far less so. Plus, I don't think I probably conduct myself the way that other YouTubers do, or I don't think that I do anyway. So I try and provide some perspective. There will always be people that will just have a go. Sometimes in an environment like that, you can actually sort of try and, explain things to them. And I have had occasions where I've actually had people, when I've been at, say, track days and stuff, I have had people walk up to me and been like, I said something about you on Piston Heads or on Facebook or something, and I'm really sorry, because actually I fucking, actually I've been here for 20 minutes watching you talk to people, and I realised that actually I got you completely wrong, and that's lovely. The whole name calling, all that jazz, is part and parcel of being on the internet. It's something that I knew was going to be an issue from before I started YouTube, and I just had to kind of be at peace with it. You can't you can't be angry at the people having a go at you. You just can't do it. A, because you'll never get any sleep because you'll just be raging all night long.
Yeah.
But also, a lot of the times, sometimes the information people present is actually useful information. They're just not packaging it in a particularly helpful manner. You know, I always say to people when they're starting YouTube, like, you need to read through all the comments, like even the bad ones, even the negative ones. You know, there will be ones that people have a go. The really weird thing, and this is mad. So you have the little app on your phone which gives you all the analytics and stuff, and on there you can get the comments, and it'll give you like the list of all your most recent comments. And if I go on it and I'm suddenly getting loads and loads of abuse, usually about my appearance, I'm actually quite happy, because, you know, like all YouTubers, I've got my subscribers, you know, my core audience base, who are largely nice people that like me and what I do, and that's why they're subscribed. And they're quite nice and decent and pleasant. And you do start to build a sort of relationship with these people. You do start to recognize the names in the comments section and so on and so forth. You think, yeah, Bob987, he always hates when I do this stuff. And, you know, and so when you start getting loads and loads of names you recognize, especially ones giving you loads of abuse, what that probably means is that your video has broken out of your usual kind of core audience, and it's now starting to do well, particularly if you feature stuff that has like a really hardcore following, Ford Capris, you know, some 911, stuff like that, you know, where they go, cars with, EVs, or Tesla, you know, those are the cars with a dedicated fan base. And if you your video suddenly starts doing the rounds, and I think this is partly what happened with the McLaren video, is just it did the rounds just everywhere. So you start getting lots and lots of abuse on a video, and I'm like, actually, this is great, because this is a sign the video is doing well. But you do have to still read through all the comments, because amongst all the horrendous abuse that you get, and as a white male, I get pretty much as the least amount of abuse on the internet as anyone ever will. But there is genuine feedback in there. So you've got to sift through a lot of trash, but there will always be, you know, in the early days in particular, you know, if I'm getting hundreds of comments on a video, well, that would have been a nice thing. If I was getting tens of comments on a video saying they're too long, you're like, okay, so I need to address this. Video length is a concern. And you start shortening them down until suddenly the comments start going, oh, your videos are too short. You're like, okay, so it's all about finding a balance. I kind of think of YouTube as like going bowling with a child, you know, and you have the bumpers up, and like, it doesn't really matter that the sort of ball goes ding, 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 you know, as long as he gets to the end and they knock some pins down, really, they've succeeded. And I feel like that child, I'm like, look, it's not exactly the direct path that you would like to think, but ultimately we did wind up where we were going. So, you know, that's how I kind of treat the comments. But the Piston Heads thread they're generally quite nice to me, so that's why. And I've been on Piston Heads much longer than I've been on YouTube, so, you know, still got friends on there and all that sort of stuff. And big shout out to my friend Darren, who runs the East Anglian chapter, I guess you call it, and puts on a lot of events. So he's a really great guy.
We've got another couple of ones. What are your thoughts on Lotus and their direction? I wouldn't say new direction, but the future.
The Evija is one of the biggest wastes of time and money that I've ever seen. I just don't understand it at all. Lotus as a company are currently in a very exciting phase where they're trying to do a lot of things. This is where I need to remember the stuff that I know that I'm allowed to talk about and the stuff that I know that I'm not allowed to talk about. So there's a lot that's going on. They've recently announced, obviously, they've got the new Emira coming out, Type 131. And I really hope with Lotus that they truly understand. And I know they've said it, but I hope they truly understand that there's more to being successful than making a great car, because they've always made great cars. And this is the McLaren thing as well, is, you know, you got the attitude of McLaren from the 12C, where they went, cool, so we've built the 12C, we've taken a 458, we've measured it, our car is better, it's done. And you're like, yeah, that's not really, you know, like, I still am incredibly bitter about the fact that my supercharger failed on my Evora 400 within warranty, 2 years in, 24,000 miles on the clock, supercharger failed. I had to pay for my own courtesy car because my Lotus dealer, who I'd bought the car from, told me because I hadn't brought it to them for servicing on account of them being 100 odd miles away, I wasn't their problem. Their words, their exact words. I asked £180 for a Hyundai i40 that I'd had to rent for a week so I could have a car.
Yeah.
And I said, can you please pay me back 180 quid for this courtesy car? And they said flat out, point blank, no, you're not our problem.
Wow.
And whilst dealers are allowed to have that attitude, Lotus could be selling you Enzos at 30 grand and they're still not going to shift them because that attitude is flat out unacceptable. Like there's a root and branch issue in Lotus. McLaren is eerily similar, and unless they really genuinely have understood, no, the customer is not an inconvenience. Like, I want to see the boss of Lotus, whoever it might be this week, at a blackboard like Bart Simpson going, the customer will not be told to go away.
Yes.
You know, the customer is actually required. You know, you can't just see them like sort of, you know, just someone making the place look untidy. Like, that's not the attitude that you can have. I want to see reinstated. I saw years ago a picture, and it must be from like the 60s or the 70s. And it was the Lotus production line, and above it, it had this slogan that said, Lotus quality is everybody's business. And that attitude is what you require. Like, they are small handmade cars. Things will go a bit wrong on occasion, but there is a lot you can do to stop the car getting to the customer with faults. And there is also then a lot that you can do with making stuff right. I mean, I had some work done to a car the other day by a place that want to work with me as a YouTuber. They want me to do some promo for them. Anyway, the car came back to me, and I really wasn't happy with the state that it was in.
Yeah.
And so I text the guy who got me involved in everything, and I sent him some pictures and said, look, this is how they sent my car back. And he just sort of came back to me and said, look, give me a minute, let me deal with it. You know, he phoned me back the next day, and he just said, look, not going to try and, you know, to BS you. Like, this is not good enough. We've had some issues with some staff. Clearly, something's been missed out here. Your car hasn't been checked over properly before it's come back to you. We're really sorry about this. We're going to refund you your money. You know, we're going to take a couple of months to get our house in order. You know, look, if you want to come and talk to us in a few months, we'd really love to do so. And I'm really sorry this has happened. And I said to him, I was like, thank you so much. Like, you're automatically now on my list of companies that I really respect. And he's like, what, you're not going to shout at me? And it's like, no, why would I shout at you? Like, what's that going to achieve for either of us? Like, you've messed up. You've taken ownership of the problem. You've rectified it. Like, and you've told me what the problem is. And hopefully when it's all fixed, we'll be able to sort it and carry on working with each other. But you don't need car companies that stick their head in the sand. And I think one of the other issues that, say, Lotus in particular have, that I found with mine, my Evora for the first... So here's the funny thing. I had hoped that with buying the Evora, I could put to bed this myth of the whole lots of trouble, usually serious thing. Yeah. I thought, Lotus unreliability, that's a holdover from the 70s and the 80s. They can't be like that anymore. No, turned out, unfortunately, they definitely still are. First 4 months of my car, 25% of my ownership, it was not in my possession. And the problem is, even if it's not on my driveway because the, you know, heater's squeaking, or it's not on my driveway because it's exploded, it doesn't actually matter. If it's not on my driveway, I'm not using it, it's therefore not there. I mean, they were very lucky that I wasn't actually paying, you know, monthlies on that car. And they're very lucky that at that time, because I just started YouTube, I did have lots of free time. You know, I worked out at one point, I'd spent like, you know, £1,000 just in like taxi fees going backwards and forwards to the dealership, you know, getting my car sorted because they were never giving me courtesy cars. And it's just like, well, you know, I was expected to pay for a courtesy car. And those are the little details that Lotus are going to need to sort out going forwards. And I'm hopeful. I'm genuinely hopeful that they will. Because the other thing with Lotus is that I already have a fair certainty about it, especially from what I already know. The next car is going to be great. Evija is just, totally forget it. It's complete stupidity. It's absolutely moronic. But the Emira is the car that they should have been building and the car that I'm genuinely excited about. You know, they did really well with the Elise final editions because, like everything, the minute somebody knows that it's not going to be around any longer, all of a sudden everybody wants it. So, I'm really glad they managed to shift a load of those. And I hope nobody tries to be cheeky and flip those because that's going to end badly. I'm really hopeful for the next car that it's going to set the template for Lotus going forward, and a Lotus that it not only has good cars, but that actually looks after its customers and should be rewarded with having customers come through their door.
Yeah, absolutely. Of the cars I've driven, like I really liked the Evora. Like I really quite like that car. There's things that need to be changed. It's an old car, so just like stuff needs to be changed. If the same ethos applies to the new car, and it's literally like what a new car should look like, I can't wait to drive it. It's going to be wicked.
I won't get to drive it, but I'm sure it will be brilliant.
But yeah, we'll see. And then I think your point about, because I don't want to necessarily come across as like someone that like bashes McLaren just for the sake of it. It's not.
That's all right. That's my job. You're not allowed to do that.
It's not like I don't have a problem with any brand. I only have a problem when there is a problem and the way they treat you when you've got a problem or something goes wrong. That's it. If that's not done well, that's when I lose it in a big way. Same like in a restaurant. You know, if there's something not right, you complain, they fix it. Or you're in a hotel and something goes wrong and they go over and above. Or they even preempt it. They're like, I can tell you've had a rubbish experience today and I've just taken a bit off the price, or here's a bottle of wine or whatever. Before you've even complained about it, you are then raving about that brand or place or anything to everybody from that moment on.
Yeah, a customer that has a problem is actually in some ways much more useful than a customer that had no problems. So I was talking to a friend the other day about insurance companies. Like, you never really know if your insurance company is actually any good or not until you need to claim from them. So luckily, I've never really found out if any of my insurance companies are actually any good or not. I've not needed their services. But, you know, one day you'll find out. And like you say, exactly that with a restaurant. Like if you say to them, something's not right here, and they go, oh, we're really sorry. You go, you know what? There was a problem. They dealt with it. Yeah. Brilliant. I will use that company again, you know, because you now know that should the worst happen, they've got you. Whereas, unfortunately, there's quite a few companies, car companies and car dealers that sort of take the whole, like, go away, like it's not our problem sort of attitude. And you're like, no, it definitely is your problem. And
as much as these things get hushed, they don't necessarily get hushed, but people don't talk about it because like owners often don't talk about it other than in like little forums and to each other. But you don't necessarily want to, if you own the car, you don't want to tell everybody that they have problems or any of that because it's going to damage the price of your car. Yeah. But then again, the issues may not get resolved.
I would love to say that McLaren learned from the experience they had with my videos, but what happened to drag times recently would kind of tell me that they didn't.
Yeah, that wasn't a good one. For the people that listen that don't know, Drag Times is an American YouTube channel. I'm not sure what the guy's called. He got to drive a McLaren Elva that was lent to him by a dealership. He posted some... in America, apparently you can get away with this sort of thing. You can basically film whatever you like, post it on the internet, and you're never getting in trouble. He did like 0 to very, very fast in the car, posted the times, internet loved it, McLaren owners loved it, people that were considering McLarens loved it, and then McLaren said, take that video down, that's not what we want to be associated with, or whatever.
They also said to him that he was not a journalist, he's just an owner with a camera.
Yes.
And that... frankly, the fact that he didn't then drive that Elva through their door is amazing restraint. The thing that kills me is like he didn't do what I did. I did a 45-minute rant picking the place apart for all of their many faults. He did a video, which is the kind of video that we should maybe see a bit more of, where he was like, look at how stupid fast this thing is. This is great. I have 100% belief his videos have sold McLarens.
Absolutely.
Like, as much as I'm sure mine have put people off, I'm sure he has sold McLarens. I never heard anything back from them. He had their VP of marketing have a go at him. They then backtracked because the internet, the McLaren Instagram was then awash with comments about this situation, rightly so. What should have happened was what happened with me and Morgan. So I did a few videos. I did some videos with some Morgans from Bell and Colville, who are a Morgan dealer, about 18 months ago, 2 years ago. And I then got an email from Morgan about a month ago. And they emailed me out of the blue and said, "Oh, hello, James. We're Morgan. I'm their PR guy. And there's we saw your videos that you've made." And you're like, "Oh no, oh great." And they're like, "We really like the videos." He's like, "But we do like to try and run press cars and stuff from the factory for reviews and so on, where we can," which is the attitude most companies take. And it's like, "Oh, great." And he's like, "We'd love you to come down to the factory, have a tour, and then we'll send you out in a car." And it's like, "Oh, that's lovely. Yeah, that's really nice." And so currently, one of the things I'm working on is trying to organise a group tour on a Friday one day of a load of people, subscribers and whatever, to go to the Morgan factory. And it's like, this is brilliant. I actually did have some interaction with McLaren PR after the videos that I put up, and I basically said to them that I think the best way for them to have dealt with things was just to give me a car for 2 weeks with no mileage limit on it, so that I could drive it around and prove and go, look, no, they can make reliable cars. But I was told no, there'd be a mileage limit on any press cars, and they didn't want to give me one anyway. So it's like, okay then, all right. That's
concept fine. And it's been discussed by other people and whatnot, but the idea that an owner with a camera is like irrelevant is the biggest like slap in the face, I think, to the internet ever, because actually owners, people that have spent their money on a car, that resonates with people that are going to spend money on a car. Now, you listen to, I've got my favorite journalists, and they will talk about a car and they'll go, "This is amazing, blah, blah, blah." And you take all that in. And as a car guy, I'm like, they know exactly what they're doing. But if separately there's someone I really like, follow like their ethos and whatever, and they've bought the car and they still like it, that to me is worth a lot more because someone's coughed up money.
Yeah, he's done that. He's coughed up money. He's in with the brand. He's making good videos that people like. He's selling cars. And I saw McLaren's investor press release the other day, which states quite how much money they're losing, and it's quite a big number. And what you definitely don't need right about now is Gerald Ratner running your PR. It's just not worthwhile. Anybody that doesn't know who Gerald Ratner is, go and Google it. It will amaze you. That is how to destroy a company overnight, and that's what McLaren Matey is sort of trying to do. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, it's not good, really. But anyway, what have you got some standout drives from the last year, 2 years, or even just your time on social media?
I did the maximum speed of the Audi RS6, which is on the Autobahn. I can tell you it was 174.
That's limited, right?
That was limited, yeah. And I was listening to Push It to the Limit from Scarface on the radio, and it was dark and it was starting to snow. It was clear, it was safe, with the only thing on the roads. But that was quite memorable. To be fair, I took the 812 out the other day, and actually it was a brilliant drive because the world is starting to feel like it's coming alive again at the minute. It certainly sounded like it as I was driving the 812 through the villages. And there was some nutter. I mean, this was 8 a.m, right? And it was a very crisp morning. Like, I put the roof down on the car after 10 minutes driving where I was sure it was toasty warm, Yeah. And there's someone in a hot air balloon. And I was driving along, and there's this beautiful, crisp, lovely blue day. And I'm sat in the car with the heater on full blast, and I'm still thinking, oh, it's a bit nippy in here. There's some madman in a hot air balloon. But it was a beautiful, beautiful sight. And actually, the other day, I got to drive one of my real childhood dream cars, which is that as much as I would say yes were anybody to offer me a go in a 288 GTO, an F40, an F50 or an Enzo, the one car that I've always had as my actual childhood poster dream car, like I always respected the 550, always loved the 550, always wanted one, but the one car was a Diablo. And so a gentleman with a very nice Diablo 6-litre, invited me to drive his car, and I got to take that out. And it was on unfamiliar roads, which is always a concern. But yeah, I managed to drive it properly. And it was, I was moved pretty much to tears. Like it was really, like, after waiting that long, to try that kind of car, and also now doing the job that I do, whereas the car is not going to automatically impress me. Like it's going to actually have to work really hard to impress me, and it still did. And I was like, that's awesome. That was, it's very, very, very important to me that, 5 years into doing YouTube, having having two Ferraris on the driveway, granted one temporarily, and being offered, drives and all this sort of exotic and wonderful stuff, it's still extremely important to me that cars can make me quite emotional. Yeah. Like, it's proof that I'm not yet dead inside and that there is still stuff out there. Like, part of me almost wants to never be able to drive a Carrera GT. Yeah. Because that then sort of replaced the Diablo as I got older. I was about 14, 15 when the Carrera GT came out. So you're like, that's full Top Gear adoration age, And I've passengered in one, but part of me is almost like, obviously if someone offered me a go, I would just leap at it in a heartbeat. But part of me is almost like, I kind of like it being the sort of, it means I've still got somewhere to go. Yeah. Like buying the Ferrari is like a big step, because for so long it's like one day I will own the Ferrari, and then you're like, well, now I do. So you're like, okay, well, I've done that thing. So you're like, well, what's next? What's next? Like, what's the other thing? And you're like, so I like that there's still a huge amount that I haven't done that still makes me excited. Like, that's important. That's really important. Yeah, that's great. That is such an important thing. I worried probably about a year ago. I was towards the end of last year. I was getting to a similar point. I'd just driven an F8 actually, but I was only allowed to drive it in sport, and I just didn't feel like it was doing anything. It literally felt like it could have had 300 horsepower. It was just quicker. Like in sport, it's just so tame, and I got out of it and was just like, oh no, what's going on? Like, I should have sort of enjoyed this, and then I gave it quite a lot of stick off the back of that, but I believe it's because I wasn't allowed to drive it in a more Larry mode, and I think in a more Larry mode I would have got a lot more back. But the day after, it's a different car. The day after, and this is something I've heard from multiple people since, they're like, if I had to drive it under the conditions that you drove it, I wouldn't drive it, because I don't think you get the experience. But the day after, and this is like pretty epic, I got to drive the GTO Engineering 250 short competition car. Oh, that's cool. And that, I got in that, drove it 10 minutes down the road, pulled over, and just like sat for 5 minutes. Just like, oh my God, this is unreal. And that was a real like, oh no, it wasn't just the car. It was almost like, oh no, you do still enjoy cars. Like, you still get a lot out of this. It's not lost. It's tough, isn't it? I remember going years ago to the Bristol Hi-Fi show, because I quite enjoy a bit of hi-fi, and a friend of mine invited me to go out there, and you're sat in these rooms of people listening to like 40, 50, 60,000 pounds, sometimes an awful lot more hi-fi systems, and you get all these people sat there steely faced, just, and it's like, do you not enjoy? And you could tell, what I found really interesting is you could tell the companies that love music. Right. Some of them were clearly very much like, we have built this new amplifier, we have measured it, it is this is a McLaren, you're like, we have measured it, it is better than anybody else's amplifier. Whereas you get to the other company and they're like, we're going to put on this old club classic. I remember listening to this in 93, couldn't remember much of the night, but this is a banger. And they're just like, and they're like, these people enjoy what they do, and it's tough. And it's difficult for car companies as well, because obviously we both deal with the PR side of things, and it's difficult because on the one hand, they have to be, the face of a very large corporation. On the other hand, some of them, they are car people. They do want to enjoy themselves, and some companies are much better at doing that than others. Yeah, totally. I think it sounds like a good time to do this. Wrap this up with 5 questions. So you found out. Go for it. Actually, the first one. Do you have a most memorable driving trip or journey? Not really sure. I do. I should. I really should. To be fair, actually, so my current girlfriend, we'd met online. We'd spoken for quite some time. She was living abroad when we met, so we'd spoken for a good few months, and then we eventually got to meet. And I basically had my E92 M3, a supercharged track car that I'd sold, but I'd sold it to a guy who was in Sweden, and he was Part Xing his very, very heavily modified. I mean, it had fiberglass doors and boot lid and stuff like that. Renault Megane. So I said to this girl, random question I know, how do you fancy coming to Sweden with me? I didn't realise, apparently, Sweden is like the #1 destination for human trafficking victims, in Europe or something. So her mum was having kittens. I had no idea about this. So we drove up there in the M3 relatively uneventfully. But then when we came back, the Megane had this splitter attached to the front of it that was very well secured, but only well secured to the bumper, which is just held on by plastic clips.
Oh, okay.
So it came to the Autobahn. I decided to give this car some stick, see what it would do. Got it to 130 and just... And this splitter just ripped off the front, just pulled the front bumper down and was dragging along the tarmac. And we then had to try and, with the time ticking, because we had to get our boat, I had to go and find the, German equivalent of, Halfords or whatever, or a garden centre, to find like a bag of 100 cable ties to cable tie this splitter basically around the radiator pretty much, or the front of the chassis, and then to hold it in place. So that was quite memorable, probably not for the right reasons. And after that, maybe a more recent one, I got invited on the Ferrari Roma launch, which is the first and only press thing I've done with Ferrari. And because of stuff that's been going on for the last year, they were like, because of everything, what we have to do is you have to get the car to yourself for the whole day. Like, oh no, that's
dear.
awful. How will I survive? So after I'd finished doing my review, I still had about 2.5 hours of the route left to do. So I just put on Classic FM, the Italian equivalent, and so just basically lived out my own Italian job fantasy, just driving this beautiful Ferrari Roma around the hills in Italy, just listening to classical music and waving at all the passers-by. That was quite special.
That sounds great. It's something I think you definitely have this way. If you're making content/filming stuff, chances are there's probably not too many moments where you're actually not making or filming or doing something just to
none.
I've got an amazing road and an hour to do whatever, and just go for a drive, put the music on and forget about it.
That
sounds
lovely.
very cool. Right.
Being able to not film is a luxury.
Yes. Yeah. Next question. 5-car garage, unlimited value. Off you go.
Okay, unlimited value. Carrera GT.
Boom.
Done. My 550. It would have to be that one because it's specialness to me. I would need a convertible, which the Carrera GT I don't think quite counts because it's a little bit impractical. So actually, as a daily, what would I have as the daily? Let's say, random one, Jaguar XF-RS.
Oh,
quite like in the French racing blue.
Yeah.
With the silly little wing on the back, which I have to have. And a sunroof, the black and blue stitching inside. So I got 2 cars left. I think, because there's a temptation here to then go for 355 because that is, the ultimate.
Yeah.
I think I'd put my Celica in there actually because I've got a thing for rally reps.
Yeah.
And to me, the Celicas of that generation, the Sega Rally thing, so there would have to be a rally replica of some description in there, and I think the Celica's the one that I like the most.
Yeah.
Cool. And then round it off with, I don't know.
Would you have some sort of track vehicle or
no
classic?
Track driving doesn't.
Like
track driving does not excite me that much at all.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I like it. It's nice and all that jazz. Actually, to be honest, and it's probably a cop-out, I probably would have the 812 GTS in there.
Great car.
And it feels, actually, this is one of the concerns I had, because you know how it is. You've just got your 812, and I'm sure already mentally in your head, you're working out what the next thing is going to be, despite not necessarily having the money, the space, anything else. But that's not important, So I need to at some point work in an airplane joke into one of my videos and see how many people get it. What have you done on YouTube? Well, it's a website with hundreds of videos, but that's not important right now. So yeah, the 812, the F12 now, I was kind of worried, like, if I already have the 550, will they feel like I'm doubling up?
Yeah.
Actually, no. It's a completely different experience. Yes, both front engine V12 Ferraris, but like, no, they're different animals. Even the 599, I think, feels both different to the F12 and the 550. Like, it stands as its own kind of thing. So I think that would be the 5.
Sweet. Well, that'd be a great bunch. If you could only drive one car for the rest of your life, and you're allowed a £500 something or other on the side, what would you have? And you can name both, or you can name one.
Oh, Carrera GT, and if I could find one for 500 quid, probably an old 5 Series. Like an E34, E39 5 Series, if you could find one for that budget. Failing that, Skoda Fabia.
Nice.
I like the idea because I remember reading years ago, whether it's true or not, that Rowan Atkinson only had 2 cars, and one was like a Golf GTI and one was his McLaren F1. And I'm like, yeah, I could kind of, I could kind of do that.
I can get behind that vibe. Like I've done that. Okay, I've got other cars, but my Audi did sort of technically get replaced by an 812 and a small electric car. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sorted. Why do I need that? Why do I need more luggage space?
I realised the other day, so when I was younger, you must have had similar things. I think everyone's had a similar experience. There was always that guy in town that always seemed to have something quite nice on the driveway, but you never knew what it was going to be. Like, either he worked for a car dealer, or he was a drug dealer, or he just liked cars, or something. And then the other day, I had a Bentayga on the drive.
Nice.
And there's this guy walking his dog, and he lives in the village. I've seen him loads of times and never spoke to him, but he decided to come and speak to me and said, this Bentayga, this is one of my ultimate dream cars. Me and my son were always talking about what it is you're going to have on the driveway next. And I realized I have become that guy. I am that guy in the village.
Yeah, I think for my street, I'm absolutely that guy, because it's the mix of like press cars, my cars, other people visiting, whatever. Like, there's always like random ass stuff like turning up or going, and you just want people must, like, if I lived on the street and I had no idea what the deal was, you'd just be like, I don't understand, like, what's going on, how are there so many cars? But no, right, cool. What do you think is the most undervalued car at the moment?
Lotus Evora is a good one. Kia Stinger. Stinger's such a good car. There's so much stuff in it. In this country, nearly any Lexus, like, especially like the LS, they are such a ridiculously well-engineered car, and yet we don't care at all for the Lexus badging here.
No,
not in the least. They're criminally underrated. There's quite a few cars like that. It's quite a good place, Britain, to be if you're into sort of car bargains, because there's a lot of stuff that anywhere else in the world would still be good money, and here we're just like, I was looking the other day, you can pick up the Stinger GTS with the 3.3 V6 twin turbo, and someone was selling one for 21 grand. Now, it's still going to have 4 years warranty on it and 60,000 miles worth. Like, it's got 370 horsepower, it goes well, it looks good, got heated and ventilated seats, sat-nav, Bluetooth, panoramic roof, it steers really nice, got a big boot, like all the toys you could want. I did 3,000 miles in America in a Stinger, and it was fabulous. And yet we just don't buy them.
And that is it. Like, there's so many cars now that have all of the toys that you used to have to spend obscene amounts of, but you have to buy the latest S-Class for tons of money. Whereas now, like, literally, what was I trying? Yaris
GR doesn't have heated seats. Like, £335,000 does not have heated seats.
That's because you've got the race seats in there. I've got the electric ones.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. It's got the comfy seats.
Oh, and you don't have the heated. That's unfortunate.
If it's got heated, I haven't yet found the button. In which case, it's going to be a negative. But I found the button on all the other Ferraris. So,
if it's got the full electric seats, they are heated. They have heated, and there's a button at the front, and it's a little circle.
Maybe I've just not found it then. In which case, I probably should edit the review.
But
these are the things you find, like, with a car. People are like, you idiot! How did you not know that? And it's like, well, I don't know.
I've realised this recently, that like someone will give you a car, Prime example was when I had these Lotuses, I can't remember, it was an Exige or something, for a little bit to drive. You get in the car, you've never been in it before. Someone just goes, there's the keys, and you're driving it, and you're like, okay, blah, 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 blah. And then someone's like, well, why didn't you press the sport button? You're like, I didn't know there was a sport button. I haven't seen the sport button. It wasn't obvious to me. I've looked at all the obvious stuff, and you just miss something that's like absolutely key until, and then often I find I will find it the morning the car's going back. Finished the video, finished everything, and then like Yaris GR, I'm just messing around with the traction control button, I think, and you hold it down and it goes into track expert. It's like it's got an expert mode. You're like, where was this? What? Why didn't I know this existed before?
One of these things.
Right, final question. Most interesting car to you at the moment?
What is on sale right now? I mean, it won't be any of the Ferrari range because it's actually the only one in there that would be the one to say is the Roma, because I'm very keen to see how well received that is. I've driven it and it's brilliant, but I'm just not sure how many people out there are actually going to go for it because I think they're going to misunderstand what it is. But that I don't think counts. Potentially, I want to say something like the maybe like the Maserati Quattroporte, like the current one, because it's got all the ingredients you think for success. Like, it's a beautiful looking car despite being enormous. It has a Ferrari built twin turbo V8 that's like a close relative of what you get in like the Portofino and the Roma. It makes a good noise. It's got a lovely interior, yet nobody buys it.
No,
like nobody. I've not driven one to know whether they're actually any good. I've driven the old one. Apparently they're more reliable than they used to be, but maybe they've lost a little bit of the specialness. I mean, Maserati in general as a brand just fascinate me because I can't help but wonder how they still stay in business.
Yes.
Because you're like, how can you sell that few cars and still be a viable company? Like, it doesn't, and they're not like McLaren where every car they sell is like, 250 grand or something. And you're like, okay, you can make some money there. But you're like, I just don't. Yeah, I don't get it.
I agree.
Like, they're curious cars.
When's their new car must be coming out? What is it? MC20? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, that I don't get.
I don't get that either.
I literally looked at it and I was like, oh, right, that's it, is it? Like, it just had no flair to me. Like, none. It seems extraordinarily conservative. Maybe, and this does happen, maybe at one of those cars, you see it in the flesh and you go, oh my word, that's gorgeous. And that's happened with a lot of cars. F8, I was in pictures, I was like, I don't know, I'm not so sure about that. In person, I'm like, no, actually, that's
a really
quite a cool car. Yeah, it's not perfect, but you're like, no, the overall impression is like, wow. I had two people totally randomly tell me it's the most beautiful car they've ever seen. But yeah, with the MC20, I'm like, yeah, it's got a V6 engine that sounds like nothing. It's got odd looks. You can't really personalize it from what I can see. So it's just like, have you not done your market research? Like, do you know what you're up against here? Like, it's a bit odd. So I hope it's brilliant because I would like to see Maserati do really well. It's just that I just don't know if they can.
No, I don't know. I worry about all modern cars, but the sort of what we're going to see now with the the Artura and the MC20 is that V6 hybrid turbo situation of like, what's it like to drive? Does it sound any good? That is the bit I'm worried about.
Well, I hope the punters are there. I mean, I hope, I genuinely, really hand on heart, I hope two things of a McLaren. I hope that Artura is a raging success story.
Absolutely.
And that, they can't make enough of them. And also I hope that the thing works and works quite well. On account of the fact that they've bet the farm on Artura doing well. And they've also said they've signed up for 5-year warranty on all the cars. So that means that if it isn't built to a really high, decent standard, McLaren owners actually do tend to use their cars. I would say compared to the equivalent Ferrari, McLaren's probably get driven a lot more, especially the more affordable ones. So you are going to see cars being handed back with 20 or 30,000 miles on the clock. So if that car isn't working properly, if they suddenly find out they've got to replace all of those gearboxes, that's going to hurt.
Yeah.
Like, possibly terminally. for McLaren. So I really, really, genuinely, for all I say about the company, and as I mentioned in videos before, I said these things because one hopes that it's a very British thing, isn't it? You know, how many times you've been to a restaurant and you've had an absolutely atrocious meal, but you won't tell anyone.
Yeah, you probably
You'll just go home and quietly seethe. You'll quietly seethe about it, won't you? Whereas if you told them, sometimes you might get that experience we were talking about earlier, where they go, "Oh, blimey, so did that happen? Oh my word, no, this should not happen.
Yeah.
We care." And I feel like a lot of people didn't understand that when I say these things about McLaren and to McLaren, it's because clearly these issues are there, and it needs to be known that it hasn't gone unnoticed. Like, it needs fixing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey-ho.
Things need fixing if they're wrong. Otherwise, they're not going to
They
get
do.
better.
They do. No one's perfect. None of us are perfect. I make loads of mistakes.
Yeah.
You know, make at least 2 or 3 a day. You know, so it's just how you deal with them. You know, you got to always strive to be a little bit better. And it's all I'm ever trying to do on YouTube is just strive to be slightly better than I was yesterday.
Yeah.
Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't.
Absolutely. On a recent video, I had a little rattle from the mic. I was sitting on top, and I couldn't hear it. And I only knew after the fact, and you're there editing, and you're like, "Oh my God, this is awful." And someone commented, and you're like, "Yep, apologies, we'll try harder."
Yeah, I've put videos in the bin basically for fairly minor things, but just because I can't, like, if I'm not happy with it,
Yeah,
I'm not going to expect anyone else, unless it's something where I'm like, I cannot possibly redo this again, then it has to go out. And I've had a couple of videos like that. And actually, I've then put videos out with warnings saying, I'm really sorry, it's awful. And then people go, what was wrong with it? Like, it was fine. You're like, yeah, okay, maybe my standards are too high. I doubt that. But, you know, we try.
Yeah, some middle ground. Right, well, thanks very much for coming on the podcast. It's been really good to sort of meet and have a chat.
No, pleasure. Sam, thank you so much. Stay safe.
Cheers.
Enjoy the 812.
I will.
And, have fun in race mode, because you will.